Chapter 134. After calming down and thinking about it, Li Mu felt that he had nothing to worry about. Although Lord Netherhell was terrifying, he was just an elder of the demon sect. He would not care about one of his subordinates. Perhaps the death of the evil ghost would not reach his ears. And that evil ghost was just one of the 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon might not pay attention to him. At the very least, even if Chu Jiang of Gojoseon paid attention to him, he would not know who killed him. Li Mu was safe. Compared to Li Mu, Li Si was more worrying. The prefectural governor and the prefectural prime minister had their own mansions in the city. Li Si should have been taken to the prefectural prime minister's mansion. Who knew how he was now? In the prefectural prime minister's mansion. Li Si stood in a bright study. The young man in white retreated to the door. The middle-aged man sat at the desk and sipped the tea in his cup. The atmosphere was strangely quiet. The middle-aged man finished the tea and put the cup on the table heavily. He said coldly, "How dare you, Li Si? How dare you?" Li Si raised his head and said, "I don't know. Please tell me." Prefectural Prime Minister. Prefectural Prime Minister Chen snorted and said, "Do you think I don't know what you did in Yongqiu County?" Li Si sighed and lowered his head. He said, "What do you want me to do? Just say it." Prefectural Prime Minister Chen showed a playful expression and said, "Aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" Li Si walked to a chair and sat down. He said, "Why should I be afraid of death? If you want to kill me, I can't stop you. What's the use of being afraid?" Prefectural Prime Minister Chen looked at him and said, "Raise your head. I only want to ask you one question." Li Si raised his head and looked at him. County Magistrate Chen's eyes seemed to have turned into a deep pool, which sucked in all his attention. Commandery Minister Chen asked slowly, "What kind of person is Meow Meow in your heart?" Li Si reminisced, "She was the purest and kindest girl I've ever met." County Governor Chen's expression softened and he asked, "Don't you think she's ugly?" Li Si said, "Beauty and ugliness are just appearances. In my heart, she is more beautiful than anyone else." Looking at Li Si, County Magistrate Chen suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed for a while, then looked back at Li Si and said, "This official will give you two choices. First, accompany Meow Meow and make her happy for the rest of her life. Whatever you want, I will give you. Money, power, cultivation, I can satisfy you." Li Si thought for a moment and asked, "What's the second?" County Magistrate Chen said, "Every Qingming festival, I'll have someone burn a few more sticks of incense at your grave." Li Si stood up and bowed respectfully to him. "Honorable father-in-law, please accept a bow from your son-in-law." Li Mu waited for less than an hour before Li Si walked in from outside. Li Mu stood up and asked, "How was it?" Li Si looked up at the sky and said, "Xiang Xiang, Jean, shall we, Pinger, and Zhehua, goodbye forever. Have you seen Miss Meow Meow?" Li Si shook his head and said, "She is not in the county capital. She will be back in half a month." Li Mu asked, "Are you really going to stop?" Li Si sighed and said, "I'll take it one step at a time." "It's good to stop," Li Mu comforted him and said. "No matter how many women you have outside, it's not as good as having one at home." Li Si asked, "What about you?" "Me." In Li Mu's mind, Li Qing's face and Lu Hanyan's figure appeared sometimes. He thought for a moment and waved his hand, "We'll see." This time, the county government promoted a total of 10 constables from the local area. Aside from Li Si, the other 9 were all local officials who had performed outstandingly in this zombie disaster, and had made some contributions to the local government. Among these people, there were no disciples from the big sections. In the county government, the disciples from the Buddhist and Taoist sects were the main force of the government. In the county government, they were the real officials of the Great Zhou. Their positions were either passed down by their ancestors or recruited by the county government. They were required to have a clean family background and no one from the previous 3 generations. They also had to be non-sect disciples. Among the 10 people, except for Li Mu, Li Si, and the young man, the others were all above 25 years old. Although they had reached the spirit condensing realm with their talent, it would be difficult for them to reach the spirit condensing realm. There was no possibility for them to go further. In the county government, there were 6 spirit condensing realm constables who were directly responsible to the county lieutenant. The 6 constables were responsible for different areas in the county capital. If the county government couldn't solve a case in the North County, they were responsible for solving it. Of the 10 people who passed the test, 3 were under Constable Zhao's command. They were Li Mu, Li Si, and the young man. Li Mu's performance in the third test was the most outstanding, so he naturally became Constable Zhao's deputy. Although this deputy didn't have any actual power, Li Mu was quite satisfied that he didn't need to patrol the streets. Constable Zhao gave them 3 days to familiarize themselves with the prefectural city and settle their own matters. During these 3 days, Li Mu temporarily stayed in an inn to refine the soul energy that the prefectural governor had bestowed upon him, as well as the soul energy he had collected from killing the evil spirits. The county capital wasn't like the county capital. The work here was more dangerous, so he had to improve his strength as much as possible. In these 3 days, Li Si had already moved to the county prime minister's manor. Li Mu couldn't help but be envious, so he could only ask the broker to help him find a house for rent near the county government. He looked at a few houses, but didn't find one that he was satisfied with. He thought that if he couldn't find one in a few days, he would just pick one and make do with it. In the county government, Constable Zhao spread a map on the table and said, "The eastern district of the county capital, as well as Yang County and Yu County in the east, are all under our jurisdiction. You have to arrange for people to patrol the city every day. Yang County and Yu County will only ask the county government for help if there's something they can't handle. What you have to do on a daily basis is to maintain the security of the Eastern District and be responsible for the safety of the dozens of villages outside the Eastern District." Li Mu's duties didn't change much compared to when he was in Yangqiu County. The only difference was that at that time, he only needed to follow behind Li Qing. Now, he had to rush in front. There wasn't much to do in the morning. Seeing that it was almost noon, Li Mu was about to go out for lunch when a yamen runner who was standing guard at the door walked into the room and said, "Constable Li, someone is looking for you." Other than the father and son of the Su family, Li Mu didn't know anyone else in the county capital. Could it be that shopkeeper Su felt that the gift he donated to the county government wasn't enough to express his gratitude, so he came to give another gift? Li Mu walked out expectantly. When he saw Zhang Shan standing outside the county government, he said disappointedly, "Why are you here?" Zhang Shan frowned. "What's with your expression?" Li Mu walked up and asked curiously, "Why are you in the county capital?" Zhang Shan said, "I'm here to send someone off." Li Mu asked, "Who are you sending off?" Zhang Shan pointed at the carriage parked at the entrance of the county government. Lu Hanyan lifted the curtain and jumped down from the carriage. Then it was Wan Wan who jumped down with a little fox in her arms. Wan Wan ran over quickly and said happily, "Young master." Xiao Bai's eyes were also filled with smiles. Li Mu looked at them and asked in surprise, "Why are you in the county capital?" Wan Wan said with a smile, "Miss said that she wants to open a branch in the county capital." Li Mu calculated that they would arrive in the county capital at noon today. With the speed of the carriage, they should have left yesterday morning. This meant that from the time Li Mu left, Lu Hanyan only took 3 days from the time she decided to open a branch, arranged everything in Yangqiu County, packed her things and left. He walked to Lu Hanyan and asked, "You want to open a branch here?" Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "The business in Yangqiu County doesn't have much room to expand. There are many people in the county capital and there are many rich people. Business is good." Li Mu asked, "Have you chosen a location?" Lu Hanyan shook her head and said, "No." "Have you hired someone?" "No." "Have you found a place to stay?" "No." Li Mu said speechlessly. "You dare to come to the county capital without anything? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Are you better at doing business or am I better at doing business?" Lu Hanyan glared at him and said, "Let's go and eat first. Wan Wan is starving." With that, she ignored Li Mu and got back into the carriage. Li Si walked out of the government office and said meaningfully, "What are you waiting for? If you meet someone like this, just marry her." Chapter 135. Lu Hanyan made the decision to open a branch in the prefecture capital 4 days ago. She used 3 days to arrange everything in Yangqiu County. After Zhang Shan heard about this from his wife, he was worried that the two of them would encounter danger on the road, so he took the initiative to escort them here. Li Mu knew very well that Lu Hanyan saying that she wanted to open a branch in the prefecture capital was just an excuse. Some things would happen countless times after the first time. In these 3 days, Li Mu also wanted to return to Yangqiu County countless times to dual cultivate with her every night. After all, this was much easier than cultivating alone. Opening a branch was just a spur-of-the-moment thing and she hadn't prepared anything yet. The first thing she had to solve was the problem of accommodation. To her, this couldn't be any easier. After dinner, she went to the broker house and bought a 2-story house. She gave the broker 10 taels of silver as a reward. The broker helped her complete all the transfer procedures within 2 hours and asked people to clean the house inside and outside. Zhang Shan couldn't help but sigh as he moved the boxes one by one from the carriage into the courtyard. It's so good to be rich. When can I buy a house like this? Li Si calculated and said. It won't take too long. If you work in the county yamen and don't eat or drink, you can save 5 taels of silver a year. You can buy a house in 200 years. If you're willing to come to the prefecture yamen, you only need about 100 years, Lu Hanyan suddenly said. If Brother Zhang Shan doesn't want to be a constable and is willing to come to Yunyan Pavilion, I guarantee that you can buy a house like this within 10 years. Li Si also said, didn't you just say that Lord Zhang's transfer order has arrived? He's about to leave Yangqiu County. When that time comes, you won't have much to do in the county yamen. Why don't you come to the prefecture capital? Although the temptation of silver was great for Zhang Shan, he still said worriedly, I'm not familiar with this place. Li Si patted his chest and said, what are you afraid of? Don't worry, I will protect you. You. Zhang Shan pursed his lips and said, you've only been in the prefecture city for a few days. Who can you protect? Li Mu glanced at Zhang Shan and said, he's really capable. Li Si was now living in the prefectural minister's mansion. In such a large prefecture, there were not many people that he could not protect. Even Li Mu needed his protection. Zhang Shan was still somewhat hesitant. He said, let me think about it. Li Si went straight to the point. Do you want to stay in Yangqiu County to accompany your wife? The hesitation on Zhang Shan's face disappeared as he said firmly, I've made up my mind. After careful consideration, Zhang Shan decided to resign. First of all, after Zhang County Magistrates was transferred, he had lost his backer in the county yamen. His life in the future might not be as good as before. Second of all, the job of a bailiff was too dangerous for an ordinary person like him. If he was not careful, he could lose his life. Especially after his experience in the past 6 months, he had long wanted to quit. Most importantly, he did not have to struggle for 200 years. It was already late, so Zhang Shan could not go back. He planned to leave early the next morning. Lu Hanyan said, there are many rooms in the new house. If Brother Zhang Shan doesn't mind, you can stay here for the night. Zhang Shan was about to agree. After all, staying in an inn cost more money. Li Si shook his head and said, there are no bedding in the new house. It's too troublesome to prepare, Zhang Shan said. I can sleep on the floor. It's fine. Li Si put his arm around his shoulder and said, you came all the way here. How can I let you sleep on the floor? You can sleep with me tonight. My bed is very big and comfortable. Zhang Shan was dragged away by him. Before he left, Li Si looked back at Li Mu with a meaningful look. Lu Hanyan also gave Li Mu a look. It was a look that Li Mu was very familiar with. Li Mu's throat moved. He swallowed and said, I want to go back to the inn tonight. Lu Hanyan asked, you're staying in an inn? Li Mu nodded and said, I haven't found a place to rent yet. Lu Hanyan pointed to the east and west rooms and said, there are so many rooms here. You can choose one to live in. It'll be convenient. Convenient for cultivation in the future. Without waiting for Li Mu to speak, she added, if you think it's inconvenient, I can buy the house next door. You can choose to live next door. You can pay me rent every month. It's too troublesome to buy another house. I'll go to the inn to get my luggage. Li Mu thought about it carefully. Even Lu Hanyan didn't think it was a problem. He had nothing to worry about. In these 3 days, he wasn't used to being away from Lu Hanyan. After he went to the yamen, she didn't cook and wait for him at home. There was no one to dual cultivate with at night. Although Li Mu didn't show it when Lu Hanyan came to the county town, his empty heart was suddenly filled. Li Mu returned to the inn and packed his luggage. When he returned, Wan Wan had already helped him tidy up the room and made the bed. The quilt on the bed wasn't new. There was a faint fragrance. Wan Wan took Li Mu's bag and said, "Miss used to cover you with this quilt before. Miss said she would buy you a new one tomorrow." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "No need. It's okay if it's an old quilt. It's fine as long as it can be used." Li Mu packed his luggage and heard the sound of footsteps coming closer behind him. Lu Hanyan leaned against the door and glanced at Li Mu. "You're here?" A moment later, on the bed, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan sat cross-legged facing each other. Their palms were facing each other. Mana quickly circulated in their bodies. Li Mu now somewhat understood why those who cultivated heretical cultivation would go further and further down this path once they started harming people. Why those righteous sects would strictly restrict the shortcuts their disciples took. Li Mu thought that he had a firm mind, but even he couldn't resist the temptation of such a rapid increase in mana. Of course, he just couldn't resist dual cultivation with Lu Hanyan. He never had the thought of harming people by extracting their souls. As for Lu Hanyan, she was clearly even less firm than Li Mu. Li Mu suddenly had a thought. Lu Hanyan couldn't wait to rush over from Yangqiu County. Did that count as having some kind of desire for him? He used the method of guiding her emotions to test her. He actually absorbed desire from her. Li Mu opened his eyes and looked at Lu Hanyan in shock. He didn't know if what he absorbed was desire to see, touch, or lust. Lu Hanyan, who had her eyes closed and focused on cultivation, suddenly opened her eyes. She felt a familiar feeling coming from her body. She looked at Li Mu and said angrily, "Did you suck me again?" Li Mu quickly stopped. Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "Do you think you're the only one who knows how to suck?" As soon as she finished speaking, Li Mu felt an emptiness in his body. He looked down and found that there was a yellow emotion in his body that was attracted to her. Yellow was desire. This was his desire for Lu Hanyan. Li Mu was stunned. Could it be that he also had desire for Lu Hanyan? His transcendence energy was much higher than Lu Hanyan's. He could cut off her guidance at any time, but this would hurt her. Li Mu simply let her guide him. At the same time, he continued to absorb the desire in her body. Not long after, the two of them fell on the bed at the same time. Lu Hanyan said weakly, "I don't want to play anymore. I'm so tired." Then she looked at Li Mu and asked, You actually have desire for me?" Li Mu said, "Aren't you the same?" Lu Hanyan explained, "I'm doing it because of cultivation." Li Mu said, "Me too." Lu Hanyan was too lazy to speak again. She lay on the bed, her chest rising and falling as she recovered her strength. Li Mu thought of Li Si's words and suddenly said, "Say, aren't you worried that you won't be able to get married if we do this every night?" Lu Hanyan said indifferently, "I'm not thinking of getting married." Li Mu said, "I'm going to get married." Lu Hanyan turned to look at him angrily and asked, "What do you mean?" Li Mu explained, "What I mean is that since we're already like this, we can't leave each other. Why don't we just be together? It won't waste the pure yin and pure yang constitutions." Lu Hanyan was stunned and asked, "Didn't you say that I'm not as good as Constable Li, not as obedient as Wan Wan, and that I'm not your type?" Li Mu. Lu Hanyan got up from the bed and looked at Li Mu warily. She asked, "Why did you suddenly change your mind? Tell me, are you after my money?" Chapter 136. Good and evil had their retribution. This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Li Mu didn't expect retribution, and he didn't expect it to come so quickly. In the past, he had despised Lu Hanyan for not being as good at fighting as Li Qing and not being as obedient as Wan Wan. She had actually remembered all of this. He looked at Lu Hanyan and opened his mouth, but he was speechless. The atmosphere on the bed was somewhat awkward. Lu Hanyan got off the bed and put on her shoes. She said, "I'm going back to my room." Li Mu had originally wanted to explain that he was not after her money, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. In any case, they were already living together. In the future, there would be plenty of opportunities to prove himself. To prove that he was not after her money, but purely after her body. After coming to the prefectural capital, Li Si's words had awakened Li Mu from his dreams. At the same time, Li Mu had recognized himself, and also began to face matters of the heart. In this half a year, Li Mu had focused on condensing his soul to survive. He did not have much time or energy to think about these issues. Even under such circumstances, two women still walked into his heart. Li Qing was the guide to his cultivation. She taught him cultivation, helped him condense his soul, protected him in all aspects, and saved his life several times. Although Lu Hanyan's cultivation was not high, she was kind-hearted and considerate. She had countless shining points. She fulfilled almost all the fantasies a man had of an ideal wife. To Li Mu, she was far more attractive than this. Pure yin and pure yang were innately suited for dual cultivation. After tasting it for the first time, the two were already inseparable. When he thought of Li Qing, Li Mu still felt some regret. However, he also knew very well that he could not change Li Qing's determination to seek the Tao. Li Si said that he had to cherish the people in front of him. Although he was talking about himself, Li Mu was thinking about Lu Hanyan. Today, when Li Mu saw her at the entrance of the prefectural government, he had already made his decision. However, Lu Hanyan was not Wan. It would not be easy to win her over. Feelings could not be rushed. Anyway, she had already arrived in the prefecture capital and did not plan to leave in a short period of time. They had plenty of time ahead of them. When he went to the county yamen tomorrow, he would ask Li Si for advice. Li Mu composed himself. Xiaobai ran in from outside and jumped onto the bed. She said obediently, "Benefactor." Her cultivation had improved a lot compared to a few days ago, mainly because of the old fox's teachings before his death. Currently, she had not completely digested the soul power, otherwise, she would have been able to transform. However, due to the increase in its cultivation, the demonic aura it was emitting had also grown stronger. There were many cultivators in the county city. The head constable of the county government was only at the soul-condensing realm, while the 6 sub-constables of the county government were all at the spirit-concentrating realm. The county captain had even reached the middle 3 realms. The risk of being exposed in the county city was very high. Even though she had never harmed anyone and the demonic aura it emitted was clear and pure, a demon was still a demon. If she was exposed in front of cultivators, there was no guarantee that they would not have evil intentions. Li Mu gently stroked her head. Xiaobai leaned on Li Mu. Her gem-like eyes curved into crescents and her eyes were filled with contentment. Li Mu thought for a moment. The hand that was stroking her gradually emitted a golden light. The light of Buddha could expel the demonic aura from demons. There were many demons and ghosts in the Jinshan temple, but they did not have any demonic aura or demonic aura. This was because they had been practicing Buddhism for a long time. Li Mu used the Heart Sutra to activate the light of Buddha. After a long time, he could expel the demonic aura from her body. Li Mu had used this method to expel the demonic aura from the little snake. This method could not only prevent the demonic aura from leaking out, but it could also prevent her from being harmed by the light of Buddha in the future. As the light of Buddha entered her body, Xiaobai felt warm and comfortable all over. She could not help but let out a moan. The soul energy in her body gradually merged into her body under the light of Buddha. She rubbed her head against Li Mu's hand. Her eyes were a little intoxicated. She could already feel that she was not far away from taking human form. In the inner courtyard, Lu Hanyan's room was still lit. She sat in front of the table and held her chin with one hand. Her eyes were blurred as she muttered, "What does he mean? What does he mean by we can't leave each other? Why don't we just be together? Does this mean that he likes me?" Li Mu had expressed his disdain for her more than once. He despised her for not having a higher cultivation than Li Qing and not being as obedient and cute as Wan. Lu Hanyan's confidence in herself had long been destroyed. Now he said something that she did not expect. Could it be that he was the same as her and had also been poisoned by the dual cultivation? In the 3 days that Li Mu had left, she was completely distracted. It was as if a piece of her heart was missing. This was the most important reason that drove her to the prefecture capital. If she could turn back time, Lu Hanyan would definitely not have taken the initiative to drink those few cups of wine with Li Mu. If they did not sleep together that night, she would not be in this predicament today. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. However, when she thought about how Li Mu actually had lust for her, her mood inexplicably improved. It was as if she had found the confidence that she had lost in the past. She had never considered marriage before. Now that she thought about it carefully, marriage did not seem so scary. Except for the fact that Li Mu wanted to marry many wives, He did not have any obvious shortcomings. If she were to marry him, it did not seem unacceptable. She smiled and said proudly, "It's too late to know my good now. What will happen in the future depends on your performance." Bah! As soon as this thought came to her mind, Lu Hanyen secretly spat a few times. She said shyly, "Lu Hanyen, oh Lu Hanyen, you have never thought of marrying. You even want to snatch Wan's man." Zhang Shan and Li Si slept in the county premier's mansion last night. When Li Mu and Li Si sent him out of the prefecture capital today, his expression was still a little absent-minded. Before he got on the carriage, he still looked at Li Si in disbelief and said, "Do you really want to enter the county premier's mansion?" Li Si said with melancholy, "Do I have any other choice?" Zhang Shan did not say anything. He just patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't be too sad. I'll explain to Xiang, Jin, Xiaowei, Pinger and Cuihua for you." Li Si looked in the direction of Yangqiu County and gazed into the distance. He said calmly, "Tell them that I'm already dead." The prodigal Li Si was indeed dead. Under the pressure of the county premier, he could not act recklessly again. Li Mu was also ready to face up to the relationship between him and Lu Hanyen. After returning to the county office, he humbly asked Li Si for advice on how to pursue a girl. Li Si put his hands behind his head and leaned on the chair of the county office. He said, "Pursuing a girl varies from person to person. There is no experience that can be applied to everyone, but one thing remains unchanged." Li Mu said, "Sincerity." Li Si nodded and said, "There are countless ways to pursue a girl, but sincerity is the most important. In this world, sincerity is the most worthless, but it is also the most valuable." Li Mu said, "Can you be more specific?" Li Si continued, "Lady Lu's life experience is miserable. She relied on her own efforts to get to where she is today. Such a girl will often close her heart and will not easily trust others. You need to use your sincerity to open her closed heart." In the past few days in the county office, Li Mu found that it was even more leisurely than the county office. After all, it was the capital of a county. Demons, ghosts and evil spirits without any cultivation would not dare to be presumptuous nearby, so the office was relatively free. After listening to Li Si's advice, Li Mu went home early and went to the market to buy some dishes that Lu Hanyen liked. During dinner, Lu Hanyen sat down opposite Li Mu. She picked up her chopsticks and glanced at the table. When she found that Li Mu had made all the dishes that she liked, she suddenly looked up at Li Mu and asked, "Do you have something to ask of me?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No." Li Mu denied it, and Lu Hanyen did not ask any more questions. After dinner, she prepared to clean up and wash the dishes. This was a tacit understanding that she and Li Mu had developed when they were in Yangqiu County. If one of them cooked, the other would wash the pot and the dishes. Li Mu stood up and put away the dishes. He said to Lu Hanyen, "Let me do it." Lu Hanyen looked at Li Mu suspiciously. "You really don't have anything to ask of me?" Li Mu said helplessly, "I said I don't." After a while, Lu Hanyen sat in the courtyard and glanced at the kitchen from time to time with a puzzled expression. Li Mu's behavior today was a little abnormal, and it made her feel a little uneasy. Thinking of what he said last night, Lu Hanyen was even more certain that something must have happened in the days when she was not by Li Mu's side. Li Mu finished washing the dishes and took the initiative to peel an apple. He walked to Lu Hanyen and handed it to her. Lu Hanyen looked around and said uncertainly, "For me?" Li Mu asked, "Is there anyone else here?" Looking at the apple that Li Mu had peeled for her for the first time, Lu Hanyen was not moved. She said with a nervous expression, "Don't be like this, I'm scared." Chapter 137. Li Mu gave the peeled apple to Wan and Xiao Bai, then went back to his room. He really couldn't understand the thoughts of mature women. Wan and Xiao Bai were still the most adorable and simple ones. He decided to put the matter of Lu Hanyen aside for now. He had absorbed a lot of lust in the past 2 days. After Li Mu refined it, he continued to cultivate the 6 senses of Buddhism. The best time to condense one's soul was on the night of the 3rd, 13th, and 23rd of every month. Apart from these 3 days, the effect of condensing one's soul was very ordinary. However, the cultivation of the 6 senses of Buddhism didn't care about the time. Li Mu had already cultivated the first sense of sight. Ordinary demonic ghosts couldn't hide from his eyes. When the first sense of sight was cultivated to a high level, one could see through all fabrications and wouldn't be trapped by illusions or formations. This was something that even the clairvoyance spell couldn't compare to. Lu Hanyan went to Li Mu's room when it was time. She did not mention anything about what happened last night. The two of them sat cross-legged across from each other. 4 hours later, she got off the bed and left. The next morning, Li Mu had just arrived at the county yamen. Before he could sit down, Constable Zhao walked in and said, "The yamen received a report from the villagers yesterday. Something strange happened in Gua village outside the city. I suspect it's the work of a demonic ghost. You should go and take a look." Other than Li Mu, all of Constable Zhao's subordinates were out patrolling the streets. Li Mu asked about the direction of Gua village. He went out of the city gate from the east side and headed for Gua village alone. Before he left, he had asked around and found out that there were no deaths in Gua village. He had just arrived at the county yamen. Constable Zhao wouldn't give him the important cases. Gua village wasn't close to the county town. Li Mu used the teleporting talisman, and it took him almost half an hour to get there. He arrived at Gua village and asked a villager about the situation. Then he knocked on the door of a house. It was a peasant woman who opened the door. When she saw Li Mu's clothes, her face lit up. She said, "Sir, you're finally here. Please save my husband." Li Mu walked into the courtyard and asked, "What happened?" The peasant woman said, "I don't know what's wrong with my husband. For the past few days, he's been going out every night. When he comes back in the morning, he falls asleep the moment he falls asleep. I can't wake him up even if I call him." This was a sign of insufficient yang qi. Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Where is your husband?" The woman pointed to the room and said, "He sleeps at home all day." Li Mu walked into the room and saw a man lying on the bed, snoring loudly. His eyes were sunken and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Li Mu's eyes flashed with golden light and he saw that this person's yang qi was extremely insufficient. Although the 7 spirits were all in his body, they were all dim and had no effect. Li Mu had also experienced drowsiness and difficulty waking up after the 2 souls of Fei Du and Dead Dog had lost their effectiveness. However, it was because his 7 souls were missing, while the man on the bed had his yang energy sucked away by something. Those low-level demons and ghosts who harbored evil intentions but didn't have the guts to kill people liked to suck people's yang energy the most. The woman looked at Li Mu and said worriedly, "Sir, what should we do?" Li Mu looked at the unconscious man and said, "When he wakes up, don't say anything or ask anything. If he goes out at night again, I will follow behind him." As a bailiff, Li Mu had carefully studied the laws of the Great Zhou. The laws of the Great Zhou were mostly written for the people of the Great Zhou. However, there were also restrictions for the demons and ghosts living in the Great Zhou, and even for the cultivators. For small cases, such as the yellow rat couple who only stole a few chickens from the villagers, the imperial court wouldn't kill them. According to the law, they just needed to pay double the compensation. However, for demons and ghosts that killed people, the law was merciless. It would only stop when their souls were destroyed. Sucking people's yang energy to cultivate was something between the two. Although it wouldn't lead to death, the punishment wasn't light either. At the very least, they would lose 10 years of cultivation. Those demons that didn't have a high cultivation level might be directly knocked out of shape and have to cultivate from scratch. Li Mu first returned to the yamen and reported the situation in Gua village. Hearing this, Bailiff Zhao said, "Tonight, I will send 2 soul-condensing realm bailiffs with you." "No need." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Things that need to suck people's yang energy to cultivate won't have a high cultivation level. I can handle it alone, but if there are more people, I'm afraid we will alert the enemy." Bailiff Zhao thought of Li Mu's performance in the 3rd illusion, and knew that his strength shouldn't be above the soul-condensing realm. He nodded and said, "Then be careful. If anything goes wrong, retreat immediately." He walked into the inner room of the duty room and took out a fu lu. He handed it to Li Mu and said, "This talisman is for you. At a critical moment, it will ensure your safety." Li Mu took the fu lu and discovered that it was a divine travel talisman. However, the spiritual energy contained in this talisman was much more than the divine travel talismans that Li Mu wrote himself. The higher the grade of the fu lu, the more powerful it was. A divine travel talisman of this grade was probably made by a transcendent realm cultivator at the very least. The maximum speed it could unleash would also be greatly increased. With this talisman, even if he encountered a middle realm demon ghost, he would be able to easily retreat. A Fulu of this grade was not cheap. As expected, the county government was rich and imposing. Even a Shen-grade Fulu could be given to ordinary bailiffs when they went out on missions. Li Mu had asked the peasant woman before. Her husband would go out every night before nightfall. It was still early, so Li Mu was in no hurry to go over. He came to a room filled with books in the county government. He took a book from the bookshelf and sat down to read. Whether it was the county government or the county government, they all had a library. The books here were prepared for the cultivators in the county government. The cultivators in the county government did not belong to any sections. Most of their cultivation relied on the resources provided by the imperial court. These books were very diverse. There were Fulu, pills, formations, and all sorts of unorthodox Daoist books. Although they were all basic books and could not touch on the core secrets of the Fulu school, the Pill Cauldron sect, or the Spirit Formation sect, it was enough for people who had just stepped into the path of cultivation to broaden their knowledge. Li Mu did not refuse any of the books. No matter how unorthodox they were or whether they could be used now, he was not picky. What Master Chen Huan taught Li Mu was not only to be careful and not to trust others easily, but also taught Li Mu that reading more was never wrong. In the afternoon, Li Mu left the county government and went home first. Lu Hanyen was about to go out to buy food. She asked, "I'm cooking today. What do you want to eat?" Li Mu said, "I have a case to take care of today. Don't wait for me to eat." Lu Hanyen paused and asked, "Are you coming back tonight?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "I should be back." Li Mu went home and changed into casual clothes. After saying goodbye to Lu Hanyen, he directly left. Wan Wan ran out from the inner courtyard and said, "Miss, let me accompany you to buy food." "Forget it. Let's not buy food." Lu Hanyen put down the bamboo basket and said, "There's still a lot of food left from yesterday. Let's heat it up and eat." Gua Village. After the sun disappeared from the west, the sky gradually darkened. A sneaky figure walked out of the village. When he reached the entrance of the village, he looked around and saw that no one was following him. Then he left quickly. Another figure landed lightly from the locust tree at the entrance of the village. It was Li Mu, who had been waiting for a long time. Li Mu stuck a camouflage talisman on himself and followed the man up the mountain. The camouflage talisman could only hide one's body and fool the eyes of ordinary people. It was easy for cultivators to sense one's aura, but it was enough to follow a mortal. Li Mu followed him into a bamboo forest. In the depths of the bamboo forest, a bamboo house was hidden. The man walked to the front of the bamboo house and pushed the door open. He said with a lewd smile, "Young lady, I'm here again." Golden light flashed in Li Mu's eyes. He saw that the bamboo house was filled with a faint demonic aura. Although the demonic aura was not as pure as Xiao Bai's, it was not dirty either. It meant that this demon did not feed on humans. Judging from the level of the demonic aura, it should be a demon in human form. Li Mu used his heavenly eye again. Together with the golden light in his eyes, he saw through the bamboo house and saw two figures inside. One of them was the man. He was lying flat on the ground. Wisps of white smoke slowly drifted out from his nose and were absorbed by the other figure. Judging from the man's twitching movements on the ground, he was probably lost in an illusion. This demon used the illusion to confuse the man's mind and take the opportunity to absorb his yang qi for cultivation. If Li Mu did not use the thunder technique, it would be difficult for him to defeat this demon in human form. However, if he used the thunder technique, it would be reduced to ashes. In that case, he would have nothing to say to the yamen. Moreover, with its actions, although it was guilty, it did not deserve to die. Li Mu thought for a moment and suddenly had an idea. He left Bai in the bamboo forest and slowly walked toward the bamboo house. Chapter 138. Inside the bamboo house, a woman in a green dress was absorbing the yang qi of the man on the ground. Suddenly, her expression changed and she looked at the door. Light footsteps came from the door of the bamboo house. A young man pushed the door open and said, "Good Aiden, I was wondering what you were up to these days, sneaking out. It turns out that you are keeping a woman in the mountain. If you don't give me some benefits, I will go back and tell your wife. She will break your legs." Hearing this, the woman in the green dress softened. She put on a charming smile and walked away. After closing the door of the bamboo house, she said with a sweet smile, "Don't. What benefits do you want? I will give it to you." As she spoke, she spat out a puff of pink mist. The young man inhaled the mist and his expression became blurred. He looked at the woman in the green dress and murmured, "I want you." The woman in the green dress waved her sleeve and the man on the ground flew to the corner of the bamboo house, unconscious. She put one hand on the young man's chest and twisted her body. She said, "Young master, you are so naughty." The young man was in a daze. Step by step, she helped him to the bed and looked at him. She said in a low voice, "You are quite handsome. I can't bear to part with you." She put the young man on the bed gently and climbed onto the bed herself. She kept twisting beside him. Wisps of white mist flew out from the young man and were absorbed into her body. After a while, the woman in the green dress stopped. She looked confused. Although the young man who came in later had abundant yang qi, she only managed to absorb a little bit of it with great effort. On the other hand, it seemed that something in her body had been sucked dry. She felt dizzy and her legs were weak. She fell back onto the bed. She suddenly looked up at Li Mu and said in shock, You are not." Li Mu cast a spell with his left hand and a white light flashed outside the house. The bai sword flew in from outside and was held in his hand. Li Mu pointed the sword at the woman and said coldly, "How dare you, demon? I can tell at a glance that you are not human." Li Mu had already seen that the woman's true form was a green snake when he was outside. The yang qi of Gua Village's man had been sucked away by this shape-shifting snake demon. The woman was furious when Bai Yi pointed at her. "Damn it! You're a cultivator." Li Mu said coldly, "You didn't walk the righteous path, so you should have expected this day to come." The woman in the green dress coldly snorted, "That will depend on your ability." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared into thin air, leaving only a green dress on the bed. "Where do you think you're going?" Li Mu jumped down from the bed. Holding Bai Yi in his hand, he chased after a green shadow that was fleeing at high speed at the door. The body of this snake demon was a green snake about 10 feet long. Its body was covered with fine scales. Li Mu had just chased out of the bamboo house when he heard the sound of wind breaking. A black shadow came right at his head. Li Mu stretched out his arm to block. His body retreated a few steps before he regained his balance. Even so, his arm was still numb. The most powerful thing about monsters was their bodies. If not for Li Mu's dual cultivation of Buddhism and Taoism, and the fact that his body had been tempered twice by Xuandu and the abbot of Jinshan Temple, the snake demon's tail whip would have broken Li Mu's arm. However, the head-on confrontation just now had given Li Mu a clear understanding of his physical strength. Although the snake demon had the upper hand in the attack just now, its tail was still trembling slightly. This meant that Li Mu's physical strength was not much weaker than its monster form. Li Mu decided to take Bai Yi in. He wanted to use his physical strength to subdue this shape-shifting snake demon. Li Mu still remembered Xuandu's bravery. The snake demon's attack did not work. It used its tail as a drill and stabbed at Li Mu's chest. Li Mu reached out at lightning speed. He grabbed the snake demon's tail and swung it away. The snake demon was thrown out and hit a tree hard. The snake demon's body was aching. It was also shocked. This human cultivator's body was not much weaker than that of monsters. It sat on the tree and said angrily, "Damn human cultivator, I have no grudge against you. Why do you have to make things difficult for me?" Li Mu said, "You have broken the law by absorbing people's yang qi to cultivate. Come with me to the yamen and be punished. I can spare your life." "Don't even think about it." The snake demon snorted. "Do you think I can survive after I enter your yamen? Don't you humans like to extract my soul, extract my snake gall, and eat snake meat?" Li Mu said, "Then let's see who's the real deal." The snake demon spat out its tongue and jumped on Li Mu with the help of the tree. It was so fast that Li Mu could only see a shadow. Li Mu clenched his fists and punched forward. It hit the snake demon's head and made a dull sound. Li Mu's fist was numb. The snake demon was sent flying. It struggled a few times but still could not get up. It was shocked by Li Mu's strength and body. It endured the pain and dizziness and gritted its teeth. "If you hadn't sucked my strength dry, you wouldn't have been able to defeat me." Boom! A white thunderbolt blasted a hole in the ground beside it. The snake demon's eyes were wide open. She felt a strong sense of danger from the white thunderbolt. If this thunderbolt hit her body would definitely be turned into ashes. Even her soul would not be able to escape. Li Mu saw that the snake demon was stunned and did not continue to force it. How about we make a bet? If you win, I'll let you go. If you lose, you'll follow me back to the yamen and accept the punishment of the law. However, I can guarantee that the crime you committed will not be punishable by death. The thunderbolt just now had proved that this person had the ability to kill her. He was the knife and she was the snake meat. She had no choice. She sat up and asked, "What are we betting on?" Li Mu said, "Let's bet on whether you can disturb my concentration. If you can, I'll let you go." The snake demon hesitated for a moment and said, "Wait for me to put on my clothes." She slithered into the bamboo house. When she came out, she had already turned into a human and was wearing an emerald green dress. She walked to Li Mu's side and looked at him with fear and confusion. But soon she snorted. A normal man would not be able to maintain his concentration under her seduction. Li Mu stood there. The snake demon's lower body revealed its original form and gently wrapped around Li Mu's legs. She hooked her arms around his neck and leaned close to his ear. She gently exhaled and said, "It's boring to cultivate alone. Why don't we do something happier?" Although she said that, she was actually thinking about whether or not she should just reveal her true form and swallow him in one gulp. This thought only flashed through her mind, but she directly rejected it. First, she had never eaten a human. Second, she could not see through this person's cultivation. She was afraid that she would die in his hands before she could take action. Moreover, although this human cultivator was abominable, he was quite handsome. If she could subdue him and absorb his yang qi to cultivate every day, it would be an inexhaustible source. Wouldn't that be a better way to cultivate? Under such close contact, Li Mu's heartbeat was normal, but the snake demon's heart was in chaos. She had always absorbed people's yang qi through illusions. When had she ever used her own body as bait? This man's yang qi that hit her in the face made her a little restless for a moment. Even her body became weak and she no longer had the strength to wrap around Li Mu. Soon, she realized that there was indeed a steady flow of power in her body. She immediately let go of Li Mu and said in horror, "What did you do to me?" Li Mu slowly opened his eyes and exhaled softly. He did not expect that one day, he would still be reduced to the point where he had to rely on his body to cultivate. The desire provided by this snake demon was more than the two female ghosts and Lu Hanyan combined. Collecting the 7 emotions was indeed more useful the higher one's cultivation was. "You lost." Li Mu looked at her and walked toward the snake demon. He said, "Come back to the county office with me." He took a few steps and suddenly stopped. He raised his head and looked out of the bamboo forest. There was a powerful demon qi that soared into the sky and was quickly approaching the bamboo forest. That demon qi was much stronger than this green snake. It must be a monster of the middle 3 realms that had condensed a demon core. The green snake also felt the demon qi. Joy appeared on its face and it said loudly, "Sister, save me!" Chapter 139. Feeling the strong demonic aura, Li Mu couldn't care less about the green snake. Without hesitation, he took out the divine travel talisman and rushed into the bamboo house. He grabbed the man's body and rushed out of the bamboo forest from another direction. With his current strength, he was no match for the green snake at her peak without the help of the 9 syllables mantra. If Li Mu hadn't sucked a lot of her lust from her at the beginning, Li Mu wouldn't have been able to gain the upper hand in the later fight. If he encountered a core condensation monster, he had no other choice but to run. Li Mu's figure quickly disappeared. A white figure came from outside the bamboo forest and landed beside the green snake. The green snake looked up at her and pointed in the direction Li Mu left. She gritted her teeth and said, "Sister, go and catch that human cultivator." The woman in white looked at the green snake who was lying on the ground and snorted. "Don't think I don't know that you secretly suck the yang qi of humans to cultivate. I came out this time to catch you." The green snake got up from the ground and said, "Then you don't care if I'm bullied by humans?" The woman in white pulled her ear and said, "You deserve it. If the government finds out, I'll see how you explain it to your father." Thinking that the human cultivator just now seemed to be from the government, the green snake's heart thumped. However, She was still unconvinced. Didn't you sneak out not long ago? Why are you only talking about me and not yourself? You still dare to talk back. See how I'll deal with you when we get back. The woman in white glared at her. She rolled up a demon wind and took the green snake with her, quickly disappearing into the bamboo forest. At the foot of the mountain, Li Mu carried the unconscious man and ran quickly on the mountain path. There was only the sound of the wind in his ears. The speed of the spirit travel talisman was far beyond his expectations. The core condensation monster didn't catch up. Li Mu didn't know if the monster had anything to do with the green snake, but it definitely had nothing to do with him. If it had evil intentions, he might not have a chance to escape when it arrived. Be careful. If you can beat it, fight it. If you can't beat it, run. This was the first rule. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't easily reveal his methods to others, Li Mu would have found a few more helpers. When they arrived at Gua village, Li Mu leaped over a wall and tossed the man into the yard. The woman hurriedly ran out and asked in panic, "My lord, what's going on?" Li Mu glanced at the man lying on the ground and said, "He has been bewitched by the demon. Every night, he runs out to let the demon absorb yang qi. That's why he is so sleepy during the day. As long as you keep an eye on him and don't let him go out, this kind of thing won't happen again." The woman asked anxiously, "Will that monster come looking for us?" Li Mu waved his hand and said, "No, just take care of your man." The snake demon was clearly not that bold. Otherwise, she would have fed on humans or gone around seducing men instead of waiting for them in the bamboo house. In the end, it was the man himself who couldn't resist the temptation, which gave the demon the opportunity to take advantage of him. "Thank you, my lord." The woman bent down and carried the man on her shoulder, saying, "I'll tie him up and keep him in the house. If he dares to run out again, I'll break his legs." Li Mu left Gua village and replaced the teleport talisman on his leg with a low-level talisman he drew himself. This high-level talisman was much faster than the one he drew. It could be used to save his life at a critical moment and could be used at a critical moment. He first went back to the government office and told the constable on duty about the green snake demon. Li Mu was just a small constable who had just entered the spirit-condensing realm. He wasn't qualified to deal with the matter of a shape-shifting demon, let alone a demon cultivator who had formed a demon core. The government office would send someone better to investigate. Although he didn't catch the green snake, Li Mu had sucked her lust to his heart's content. A demon with such a cultivation level would have a lot of emotional power. If it were an ordinary woman, Li Mu might have to suck thousands of them to reach the spirit-condensing realm. But if he sucked the green snake every day, he might be able to reach the spirit-condensing realm in less than a month. In fact, he shouldn't have made a bet with the green snake. He should have caught her and sucked her lust every day to help him cultivate. After tailing Gua village for a long time and fighting the green snake, he had to report back to the government office. When he got home, it was already midnight. Lu Hanyan and the others were already asleep. Li Mu didn't have time to eat in the afternoon. He was going to cook a bowl of noodles for himself. As soon as he walked into the yard, Lu Hanyan came out from the inner yard with a lantern in her hand. Li Mu asked in surprise, "Why aren't you asleep yet?" Lu Hanyan yawned and said, "I'm a little hungry and can't sleep. I'm going to cook a bowl of noodles. Do you want to join me?" Li Mu said, "Then cook a bowl for me too." Soon, Lu Hanyan cooked 2 bowls of clear soup noodles. The two of them ate in Li Mu's room. In addition to a few vegetables, Li Mu also had 2 poached eggs in his bowl. His appetite was greatly increased. He finished the noodles quickly and even drank the soup. When he put down the bowl, he saw that Lu Hanyan's noodles hadn't been touched. He was stunned for a moment and asked, "Why aren't you eating?" Lu Hanyan supported her chin with one hand and said, "I'm suddenly not hungry anymore. If you can still eat, eat mine too." Li Mu looked at her and picked up the bowl in front of her. Lu Hanyan seemed to have seen it. She suddenly grabbed his wrist, pulled up his sleeve and asked, "What happened to your hand?" Li Mu looked down and found that there was a bruise on his wrist, which should have been caused by the tail of the green snake just now. Although his body was also very strong, it still couldn't be compared with that of a monster. He lowered his head to eat the noodles and said, "I went out to handle a case at night and found a monster. I was injured when I was fighting with her." "How could you be so careless?" Lu Hanyan frowned and said, Your skin is originally white and tender. It's so ugly to make it like this. I'll go and get the medicinal wine. Li Mu's body was strong and resilient. This kind of bruise could be healed in 2 years at most, but Lu Hanyan insisted on helping him apply the medicinal wine. Li Mu had reason to suspect that she just wanted to take this opportunity to touch him. But this time, he didn't find any desire on Lu Hanyan's body. Li Mu quickly finished the second bowl of noodles. Lu Hanyan put away the bowls and chopsticks and asked, "Are you still cultivating tonight?" Li Mu said, "I'm fine with anything. It's up to you." Lu Hanyan put away the bowls and walked out. She quickly came back in, took off her shoes, and sat cross-legged on the bed. Li Mu also got on the bed and sat opposite her. They began their daily dual cultivation. Lu Hanyan closed her eyes and suddenly said, "If you want to absorb my emotions, go ahead. Anyway, as long as I want to dual cultivation with you, I will have desire. Absorb a little every day, and there will be a time when you can condense your soul." Compared with the green snake's desire, Lu Hanyan's desire was pitifully small. Li Mu shook his head and said, "No, I'll find a chance to absorb from others in the future. Who do you want to absorb?" Lu Hanyan immediately opened her eyes and asked, "Do you want to marry a few more wives?" Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan and asked, "What's wrong?" Li Si had once taught him that when pursuing a woman, he couldn't blindly pursue her. This would only reduce his bargaining chip in her heart. When appropriate, he had to be both hot and cold, neither close nor distant, so as to make her feel a sense of crisis and urgency. In any case, the two of them hadn't confirmed any relationship yet. Li Mu had the freedom to marry a wife according to the law. Lu Hanyan obviously also realized that Li Mu was her tenant and dual cultivation partner. She didn't seem to care about how many wives he wanted to marry in the future. She thought for a moment and explained, "I'm asking for Wan. It's not like you don't know how much she likes you. If you do this, she will be very sad." He wanted to make Lu Hanyan feel a sense of crisis, but he couldn't go too far. Li Mu said, "I only want to marry one at the moment." Lu Hanyan was somewhat satisfied in her heart, but she quickly realized that this didn't seem to be the best answer. If Li Mu really wanted to marry her, then what about Wan? Wan was the one who liked Li Mu first. If she snatched him away, how sad would Wan be? She couldn't make Wan sad. After thinking carefully, she looked at Li Mu and said, "I think if you want to marry 2 people, Wan can also accept." Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan and seemed to understand what she meant. Although she didn't say it, in fact, she and Li Mu both knew it very well. The two of them probably couldn't leave each other for the rest of their lives. Lu Hanyan's words just now meant that if he wanted to marry 2 people in the future, she could also accept it. Wan was a servant girl, so she shouldn't be counted as a candidate. Was she hinting at Xiao Bai? Xiao Bai was already homeless. After transforming, she would definitely stay by Li Mu's side to repay his kindness. But she just said that Xiao Bai was a human, so she obviously couldn't be counted. Could it be that she was hinting at Li Qing? Chapter 140. Li Mu had only been in the prefecture capital for a few days, but he had already gained a lot. He had thought that he would only be able to condense the last 2 spirits when the time was right. He did not expect that he would be able to collect so much desire so quickly. More importantly, he had found a way to collect lust. Whether it was humans, ghosts or demons, as long as they coveted Li Mu's yang qi, soul, beauty, body etc., they would all generate desire. Now that he thought about it, he should not have sucked in too much of the green snake yesterday and been discovered by her. If he had pretended to be an ordinary person who had been charmed by her and contributed a little yang qi every day and absorbed a little desire, he would have accumulated enough desire to condense his soul in 2 months at most. He had been too careless. Early in the morning, Constable Zhao personally asked Li Mu about the details of last night's situation. Li Mu told him the truth about the green snake. Constable Zhao said worriedly, "One of them is in human form while the other is in core formation. This is not easy to deal with. I hope that the core formation demon will not cause any more trouble." After a while, he went to the back of the office. When he came out, he had a piece of jade in his hand. He handed the jade to Li Mu and said, "This is a spiritual jade. The jade contains spiritual qi and can be used directly for cultivation. Although you did not bring the snake demon back, You saved the commoner from her. You have completed your task. This spiritual jade is your reward. Li Qing had once mentioned to Li Mu that cultivation resources were abundant in the prefecture government. One could obtain spiritual jades, fulu, pills, magic weapons, and even secret techniques through completing tasks. These were the most important factors that attracted cultivators to work for the imperial court. There were no sects or clans to provide them with cultivation resources. This path was almost the only way to obtain cultivation resources that were allowed by the law, and it was also the only way for them to obtain cultivation resources. Spiritual jades were a type of jade that contained spiritual qi. They were also the most common and basic cultivation resource. They were originally just ordinary jades because they had the ability to store spiritual qi. If they were placed in a place with abundant spiritual qi, they would accumulate a large amount of spiritual qi over a long period of time. The quality and size of spiritual jades were different, and the spiritual energy contained in them differed greatly. The spiritual jade in Li Mu's hand was very small, and the spiritual energy contained in it was equivalent to 7 or 8 days of guided cultivation. This kind of errand allowed him to absorb desire and obtain cultivation resources. It was the best of both worlds. After absorbing the spiritual qi in the spiritual jade, Li Mu gently pinched the jade in his hand and it turned into fine powder. He didn't read the book. Instead, he sat quietly in the guardroom and used the soul-searching talisman to search through the memories in his mind. This time, he wasn't searching for himself, but the memories of Reverend Thousand Illusions. Previously, when Venerable Master Thousand Illusions failed to possess Li Mu's body, his consciousness was wiped out by the power of heaven and earth. However, his memories remained in Li Mu's body. At that time, these memories flashed through Li Mu's mind for a moment before quickly dissipating. Li Mu thought that those memories had completely disappeared, but when he accidentally used the soul-searching talisman, he discovered that those dissipated memories actually still remained in his mind. What surprised Li Mu was that through the soul-searching talisman, he could see not only the memories of the months when Venerable Master Thousand Illusions occupied Old Wang's body, but also the memories that belonged to the real Venerable Master Thousand Illusions. Venerable Master Thousand Illusions was one of the 10 great elders of the demon sect and a powerhouse of Dongxian. His memories were more useful to Li Mu than the Yaman's library. Although Li Mu had only searched a very small part of his memories, the contents of that part greatly broadened Li Mu's knowledge. The corpse sect was one of the 10 great sects of the demon sect. As an elder of the corpse sect, Venerable Master Thousand Illusions was very good at refining corpses. Less than half a month after the death of the old landlord Zhang, Venerable Master Thousand Illusions had used a secret technique to refine a jumping zombie with decades of cultivation. After that, he even used the Yin-Yang 5-element soul refining formation to raise the strength of the flying zombie to the level of Dongxian, directly deceiving the 3 Dongxian cultivators of the Fulu School and Xuanzong. Now that he thought about it, it was no wonder that he was so familiar with the altar under the Bay of Clearwater. For an elder of the corpse sect, that kind of corpse nurturing formation was nothing but child's play. In his memories, there were many cruel and bloody secret techniques of the demonic path. In addition to the Yin-Yang 5-element soul refining formation, there were also the 18 Yin prison formation, the 10 ghosts god-trapping formation, and other demonic path formations. Li Mu only skimmed through these and didn't understand them in detail. The Thousand Illusions demonic art, cultivated by Venerable Master Thousand Illusions, could create a split soul with all of his memories. By taking over someone else's body, he could be reborn and achieve immortality. Although Li Mu didn't plan to cultivate this demonic path technique, regardless of whether it was the demonic path or the righteous path, there were some similarities that he could learn from. He could learn from the Thousand Illusions demonic art split soul technique and leave a life-saving skill for himself. Li Mu couldn't digest all of Venerable Master Thousand Illusions' memories in a short time. After searching for a short time, his head started to swell. He took off the soul-searching talisman and planned to rest for a while. A Yaman runner walked in from outside and said, "Li Mu, here's an invitation for you." Li Mu took the invitation and opened it to see that it was from shopkeeper Su. Tonight, he was hosting a banquet at the Su mansion and invited some friends. He also invited Li Mu to thank Li Mu for saving Su Hao's life. Li Mu hadn't decided whether or not to go. Compared to the delicacies of the Su mansion, he still preferred Lu Hanyan's home-cooked dishes. Lu Hanyan hadn't been in a good mood for the past 2 days. The construction of the Yunyan Pavilion branch didn't seem to be going smoothly. Zhang Shan returned to Yangqiu County for a few days and came to the county capital to help with the construction of the new Yunyan Pavilion. Zhang County magistrates had been Yangqiu County magistrate for many years and had enough experience. Although he was slow to realize the truth about Venerable Master Thousand Illusion's death, one of the 10 great elders of the demon sect, the Yangqiu County government had contributed greatly. As the county magistrate, his contributions were naturally not small. He took this opportunity to be promoted and placed in an important position by the imperial court. Zhang Shan had long had thoughts of resigning. Now that Zhang County magistrates had left, he also took this opportunity to resign from his post as a bailiff. He planned to help Lu Hanyan build a new Yunyan pavilion in the county capital and by his own residence within 10 years. Although Lu Hanyan was quite capable, she was still a woman and wasn't suited to show her face in certain matters. After asking Zhang Shan, Li Mu found out that the profits in the county capital had long been divided up by the major merchants. It was almost impossible for the new shop to interfere and take a share of the profits. Zhang Shan looked at Li Mu and asked, "Do you want to ask Li Si for help?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No need." Li Si was living off a woman in the county magistrate's residence. Although no one in the county capital could bully him, it wasn't realistic for him to use his position to bully others. Li Mu walked into the inner courtyard and saw Lu Hanyan sitting by the stone table. She rested her chin on one hand and looked worried. Li Mu walked over and sat across from her. He asked, "What do you plan to do now?" Lu Hanyan said, "The bookstores, music stores, and opera houses have all been firmly occupied by those people. Nothing can enter. If there's really no other way, then we won't open a branch. In any case, the 4 shops in Yangqiu County are enough for us to spend our entire lives. Let's not think about these things." She shook her head and stood up. "What do you want to eat? I'll go cook." Compared to the banquet at the Su Manor, Li Mu still preferred to eat at home. He casually threw the invitation on the table and said, "Whatever. I'll eat whatever you cook." Lu Hanyan's gaze inadvertently skimmed over the invitation and saw that it was quite exquisite. She opened it and looked at it. She said in shock, "Why would the Su family invite you?" Li Mu said in surprise, "You know of the Su family?" "Of course." Lu Hanyan held the invitation and said, "They're also a major merchant in the county capital. If they're willing to help, the matter of the branch is nothing." Lu Hanyan looked expectantly at Li Mu and asked, "To think that the Su family would invite you to a banquet, and it was even personally invited by shopkeeper Su. Are you close to him?" Li Mu nodded and said, "We've only met once." Seeing Lu Hanyan's expression, Li Mu knew that this banquet was unavoidable. Although Li Mu and shopkeeper Su had only met once, after the banquet, Li Mu had mentioned to him that he had a friend who wanted to open a shop in the county capital. Shopkeeper Su had expressed a strong desire to take care of him. In the business world, the Su family was undoubtedly the local tyrant of the county capital. In just half a day, he had already helped the Yunyan Pavilion establish all the connections and even helped choose the location of the shop. This was undoubtedly telling everyone that the Yunyan Pavilion had the support of the Su family behind it. If anyone wanted to do anything wrong, they had to consider the Su family. Li Mu also did not expect that his small effort back then would be exchanged for the Su family's great help. Lu Hanyan came back from looking at the shop in the morning. She looked at Li Mu and said, "Thank you." Li Mu waved his hand. "We're on the same side. You're welcome." Lu Hanyan did not say much. She glanced in the direction of Li Mu's bedroom. Li Mu walked into the bedroom. Lu Hanyan followed him in and closed the door. Wan Wan carried Xiao Bai and stood in front of the moon door. She muttered, "What do Miss and young master have to talk about every day in the room?" Chapter 141. In the next few days, Lu Hanyan was busy with the opening of the shop during the day, and came to Li Mu's room to dual cultivate at night. She went from cultivating for 4 hours every day when she first came to the prefecture capital to spending the entire night in Li Mu's room, only returning at dawn. She cultivated for a shorter time than Li Mu, but now she had already condensed 4 spirits, only 1 less than Li Mu. This was partly because of her purine body, and partly because of their dual cultivation. In the morning, Li Mu opened his eyes. Lu Hanyan, who was sitting cross-legged opposite him, her long eyelashes fluttered and her eyes also opened quickly. The two of them sat cross-legged opposite each other with their hands in front of them, holding each other tightly. At the beginning of dual cultivation, their palms were still facing each other. Later on, Lu Hanyan felt that it was too tiring to hold her hands up, so she suggested that Li Mu change positions. The two of them tried many positions, but in the end, they still felt that this one was the most energy efficient. Li Mu sensed the subtle changes in Lu Hanyan's body and asked in surprise, "You've refined the fifth spirit?" Lu Hanyan was slightly proud and said, "I'm the same as you now." Li Mu sighed inwardly. She had a complete purine body. Under normal circumstances, her cultivation speed would be faster than Li Mu's. In addition, she had the fear of the seven spirits and the courage that Li Mu collected for her. Her cultivation speed could be said to be extremely fast. Right now, he was still far away from the completion of his lust and love. Lu Hanyan would definitely refine the seven spirits earlier than him. However, as of now, both of them had refined the five spirits, but the difference in their dermic powers was too great. If they really fought, Li Mu would be able to make her lie on the ground and beg for mercy in a very short period of time, even if he only used one hand. He stretched his body and said, "Go home early today. I'll teach you a Dao technique." Dao techniques? Lu Hanyan was shocked. Aren't Dao techniques not allowed to be taught to outsiders? The Dao techniques of those orthodox sects cannot be passed on to outsiders. My Dao techniques did not come from them, Li Mu explained. He then added, "Besides, you are not an outsider." Lu Hanyan felt a little sweet in her heart. She asked curiously, "Besides me, who else did you teach it to?" Li Mu was stunned for a moment, then he quickly got out of bed and said, "I'm going to be late. I'll go to the yamen first." Lu Hanyan saw his figure disappear quickly, and she already had an answer in her heart. A woman's silhouette appeared in her mind. She sighed, her heart aching. Then, she felt an even deeper sourness. Lu Hanyan turned to look at the door. She saw Wan Wan standing there with Li Mu's toiletries in her hands. Her expression was complicated. Lu Hanyan panicked for no reason. She immediately explained, "We're just cultivating." Wan Wan walked in and said, "I know. Miss also likes young master." "Nonsense. How could I like him?" "Don't worry, Mississippi. I won't be angry." Wan Wan walked to the bedside and whispered, "If it weren't for Miss, I would have starved to death. My life was saved by Miss, so my things are Miss's things." Lu Hanyan rubbed her head and said helplessly, "Why are you so silly?" Wan Wan's small face showed a charming smile. "I want to be with Miss and young master forever." Lu Hanyan sighed and said, "You must have freeloaded on him in the past." "He must have drugged you." Wan Wan pouted and said, "Then Miss must have drunk it too. Young master just left, and you chased him here. Miss is more anxious than me." "Little girl, you're getting more and more impudent." "I have big and small. Miss is big, I'm small." Li Mu didn't even eat breakfast and slipped out of the house. Even a girl as indifferent as Li Qing would be angry because Li Mu passed the Qingxin formula to Lu Hanyan. If he told Lu Hanyan that he passed the confrontation formula to Li Qing first and not her, she probably wouldn't go to Li Mu's bed tonight. He casually bought 2 buns on the street. After filling his stomach, he went to the yamen. Because of his outstanding performance in the entrance examination, Li Mu didn't have to work hard on patrolling the streets. Most of the time, Li Mu stayed in the duty room alone. He originally planned to comb through Thousand Illusions' venerable master's memories. When he walked into the duty room, he found that Constable Zhao was also there. "Good morning, Constable Zhao." Li Mu walked into the duty room and greeted him. Constable Zhao walked over and said, "You're not early. I've been waiting for you." Li Mu asked, "Is there an errand again?" Constable Zhao nodded and said, "I originally planned to arrange for someone else to investigate this errand, but since you've come to the yamen, I think it's best for you to go." Li Mu asked, "What errand?" Constable Zhao said, "Do you still remember that you asked me about Chu Jiang of Gojoseon?" Li Mu had just killed a ghost general under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Furthermore, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was backed by the Nether Saint, who was also one of the 10 great elders of the demon sect. How could he forget? Li Mu probed, could this errand be related to Chu Jiang of Gojoseon? Constable Zhao smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm not asking you to capture Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. I just want you to investigate a place. This place may involve a ghost general under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon." If it was just a ghost general, It would be fine. With Li Mu's current cultivation, even if he couldn't defeat a fourth realm ghost, he could still escape unscathed. Constable Zhao thought that he still had concerns and said, "Don't worry, this errand isn't too dangerous." If it weren't for the fact that the prefectural governor wants to investigate whether Chu Jiang of Gojoseon has any conspiracy behind his back, he would have already taken action himself. "With your strength you should be able to handle it easily," Li Mu asked. "What errand is it? Please tell me in detail." Constable Zhao. Constable Zhao nodded and said, "We need you to investigate a brothel. That brothel may be related to a ghost general under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. It's easy to kill that ghost general, but the prefectural governor wants to find out Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's secret through that ghost general." Li Mu was puzzled. What secret could Chu Jiang of Gojoseon have? Constable Zhao sighed and said, "The Nether Saint has the 10 kings of hell under him. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon is ranked second among the 10 kings of hell. His cultivation has reached the peak of the 5th realm. He must have a motive for leaving the Soul Sect and coming to the remote northern county." Li Mu was still puzzled. "There are many colleagues in the Yamen who have higher cultivation than me. Why would he choose me?" Constable Zhao looked at him and said, "Firstly, the other people in the Yamen are all familiar faces. It's easy to be exposed. The 10 of you have just arrived at the Yamen and are not familiar with your colleagues, let alone outsiders. Secondly, the person who carries out this errand needs to have strong willpower. He must be able to resist the temptation of beauty and maintain a clear mind at all times. He must also have the courage to face danger without fear." Li Mu thought for a while and said, "Actually, Li Si is more suitable for this errand than me." Constable Zhao sighed and said, "I've also thought about Li Si. He has no cultivation, so he won't arouse suspicion. But it's because he has no cultivation that he can't protect himself if something happens. If something happens to him, the prefectural governor will blame us. No one can bear the responsibility." He looked at Li Mu and said, "You're different. Although you only have the cultivation of the spirit condensing realm, you can fight against demons in human form and escape from those in the core condensing realm. You're the most suitable person to carry out this errand." Li Mu hesitated. If it was just a ghost general, it would be fine. But Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was a 5th realm ghost cultivator. He was even stronger than Su He. He was an opponent that Li Mu couldn't defeat even if he used a cheat. Constable Zhao added, "The brothel is in the prefecture capital. At most, there will be a 4th realm ghost general. Maybe it's not even at the 4th realm. After you complete the errand, you'll receive a generous reward." Li Mu thought for a while and asked, "How generous?" Constable Zhao said, "You can choose 30 pieces of spiritual jade. You can also choose treasures of similar value, such as Fulu and so on." 30 pieces of spiritual jade was equivalent to about half a year of his guidance cultivation. Li Mu's expression turned serious and he said, "The reward isn't important. What's important is to get rid of evil for the people." He quickly thought of something and asked Constable Zhao, "If I kill one of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals, will the Yamen reward me?" Constable Zhao said, "There are 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. You'll receive a generous reward for killing any one of them. The stronger the ghost general is, the more generous the reward." After he finished speaking, he realized something and looked at Li Mu and asked, "You killed one of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals?" At this time, Li Mu didn't need to hide anymore and said, "Shopkeeper Su's son was captured by one of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals. I killed him while I was at it." Constable Zhao was stunned and asked, "So that's why you asked me about Chu Jiang of Gojoseon at that time?" Li Mu nodded. Constable Zhao looked at him in surprise and said, "I'll bring you to see the county lieutenant." Li Mu had been in the Yamen for a few days, but he had never seen the county governor or the county lieutenant. They all had their own mansions and wouldn't come to the Yamen unless there was something important. The county lieutenant, on the other hand, was usually in the Yamen, but he had never shown his face. Constable Zhao led Li Mu to a spacious hall. Li Mu stood at the door. Before he even stepped in, he could smell a strong smell of alcohol. A few wine jars were carelessly thrown on the ground. A man was slumped on a chair, holding a wine jar in his hand and drinking wine with his head tilted back. Constable Zhao shook his head and walked forward. He said, "Sir, I have something to report." He whispered a few words and the man suddenly opened his eyes. The drunkenness in his eyes was gone and he stared straight at Li Mu. He asked, "You killed one of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It was just a coincidence." The man waved his hand and many ghosts appeared in the air in front of Li Mu. The man asked, "Which one?" Li Mu immediately recognized the evil ghost he had killed. He pointed at the last of the ghosts and said, "It's him." "That's right." The man glanced at Li Mu and said to Constable Zhao, "Bring him to the Xian house and choose anything." When Li Mu walked out, he looked at Constable Zhao in confusion and asked, "The county governor knows about the death of the ghost generals. Could it be?" Constable Zhao smiled and said, "Do you think that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon has been in the North County for so long that the officials would not be on guard?" Li Mu said in shock, "Could it be that we have spies under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon?" Constable Zhao did not say anything else. He led Li Mu to a pavilion and went straight to the second floor. He said, "This is the Xian house. You can choose any one of the Fulu and Dharma treasures here or convert them into spiritual jades." Li Mu looked around and saw rows of wooden shelves in the room. The first row of shelves had dozens of Fulu arranged neatly. The second row of shelves had all kinds of Dharma treasures. There were bronze mirrors, jade hairpins, short swords, long swords, etc. The third row of shelves was filled with spiritual jades. Constable Zhao walked to the middle of the first row of shelves and pointed at a Fulu. He said, "I suggest that you choose this guiding thunder talisman. This Fulu can kill demonic ghosts of the fourth realm and below. It can save your life at a critical moment." Li Mu smiled and glanced at the Fulu. To him, the thunder talisman was a useless talisman. Its power was not as strong as the confrontation formula, and it was a one-time use item. He wanted to choose spiritual jades, but when he passed by the wooden shelves with all kinds of Dharma treasures, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His gaze swept across the bronze mirrors and all kinds of weapons. Finally, it stopped on a jade hairpin. This jade hairpin was very simple. It was made of white jade without any other color. There was a pearl flower embedded at the top of the hairpin. It looked like an ordinary white jade hairpin. Li Mu stood in front of the shelf and thought for a moment. He said, "I want this." Chapter 142. After coming down from the small building, Li Mu raised his head and looked up. There were 4 floors in this building. Each floor had a square wooden plaque. From top to bottom, they were respectively heaven, earth, black, and yellow. This was the treasure vault of the county government. It was used to store the rewards of the county government. According to the contributions of the officials, the rewards were divided into 4 levels. The higher the floor, the higher the grade of the magic treasures. It was said that in the heaven floor, there were heaven-grade Fulu, heaven-grade magic treasures, and Daoist techniques as rewards. Of course, items of this level would not be stored here. They would need to ask the imperial court for permission from the emperor himself. Then, the imperial court would distribute them. Li Mu did not even need to think about heaven-grade merits. Unless he killed a demon sect elder like the Thousand Illusions Venerable or the Nether Saint, or destroyed a demon sect subsect by himself. Those who could do all these did not care about these rewards. Those who cared about these rewards did not have the ability to obtain them. Li Mu did not have any extravagant hopes. Thinking about the scene in the back hall, he asked Constable Zhao, "The county governor seems to hate Chu Jiang of Gojoseon very much." Constable Zhao sighed and shook his head. The county governor and Chu Jiang of Gojoseon have a blood feud. His parents, wife, and children all died at the hands of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Thinking about the county governor's appearance, Li Mu was shocked. Constable Zhao continued, "When the county governor first came to the North County, he took the lead. When he encountered dangerous tasks, he always rushed in front of everyone. The 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon committed all kinds of crimes in the 13 districts of the North County. The county governor killed 5 of them in half a month. Even the number 1 ghost general that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon valued the most was killed by the county governor." Li Mu didn't expect the commandery officer to have such a past. Thinking of the drunkard just now, he couldn't associate him with such a brave image. Constable Zhao's face was filled with grief as he said, "When the 5 ghost generals were killed, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was enraged. He personally took action and exterminated the prefectural governor's family. Since then, the prefectural governor has become what he is now. He hates Chu Jiang of Gojoseon to the core. Otherwise, with your contribution in killing an evil spirit, you wouldn't have been able to choose resources from the Xian. While Li Mu sighed in his heart, he also raised his vigilance. As a bailiff, his duty was to protect the safety of the people under his jurisdiction. He often had to risk his life against these demons and ghosts. Even if he wasn't afraid of them, he had to be on guard against them attacking the people around him. It was urgent to improve the strength of Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan. He left through the back door of the county office. For a long time, Li Mu's task was to investigate the secrets of the brothel called Spring Wind Pavilion. In order to not attract attention, he didn't have to come to the yamen again. Going from the back street to the main street, Li Mu hesitated for a moment when he passed by a jewelry store. He walked in and bought a hairpin. Then he went to the market and bought the pig trotters that Wan Wan liked and the roasted chicken that Xiaobai liked. He took them home. Lu Hanyan didn't go out today. Seeing Li Mu, she said in surprise, "Why are you so early today?" "There's nothing going on in the yamen today." Li Mu put the things in the kitchen and asked, "You didn't go to the store?" "With Zhang Shan there won't be any problems," Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said. "Besides, didn't you tell me to come back early?" Li Mu didn't say anything else. He took out the jade hairpin and handed it to her, saying, "This is for you." Lu Hanyan didn't immediately reach out to take it. She asked, "Why are you suddenly giving me something?" She glanced at Li Mu and saw that his expression was normal. She was suspicious. Did he know what it meant for a man to give a woman a hairpin? Li Mu said, "If you don't want it, I'll give it to Wan Wan." Lu Hanyan finally reached out to take it. Li Mu looked at the little maid who had a disappointed expression. He walked over and pinched her face with a smile, saying, "Of course there's also yours." He took out a brocade box from his sleeve and handed it to her, saying, "See if you like it." The little maid's face bloomed with a smile again. She hurriedly took the brocade box and opened it. She was stunned for a moment. A jade hairpin lay quietly in the brocade box. The jade hairpin was exquisitely made. The body of the hairpin was carved with beautiful patterns. At the top was a beautiful pearl flower with beautiful tassels hanging from the bottom. No matter how she looked at it, this jade hairpin was much more beautiful than the previous one. Compared to this jade hairpin, Lu Hanyan's hairpin was just an ordinary white jade with a bead embedded in the back. Wan Wan lowered her head and hesitated for a moment. She held the jade hairpin and walked in front of Lu Hanyan, saying, "Miss, this is for you." Lu Hanyan also pinched her face and said, "Since it's for you, you should take it." Li Mu knew that Wan Wan and Lu Hanyan had a deep relationship. If Lu Hanyan hadn't taken her in, she would have been abandoned by her parents and starved to death in the wilderness. Therefore, she always wanted to give the best things to Lu Hanyan. When she saw that her hairpin was more beautiful than hers, her first thought was to exchange it with her. Lu Hanyan treated her as a younger sister, but in her heart, she had always regarded herself as a maid. Although Xiaobai envied Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan's gifts, she also knew that before she could transform, these beautiful clothes and jewelry could only be looked at. After dinner, she couldn't wait to go back to her room to cultivate. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan washed the dishes together and said, "Come out of the city with me." Lu Hanyan asked, "Why are we going out of the city?" Li Mu said, "You'll know in a while." After instructing Wan Wan and Xiaobai to guard the door at home, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan walked out of the house and out of the city. Lu Hanyan didn't say much along the way. Li Mu knew what she was thinking and explained, "Your hairpin is different from Wan Wan's." "I know it's different." Lu Hanyan curled her lips and said, "You like Wan Wan and Constable Li. You give them all the good things first, and then they give the rest to me. After all, I'm not as good at fighting as Constable Li, and I'm not as obedient as Wan Wan. I'm not your type." If Li Mu could go back to a few months ago, he would definitely slap himself in the face. Now, he could only cough softly and say, "Actually, that was just a joke. Apart from being better at fighting than you, and Wan Wan being more obedient than you, what else can she compare to you? You're multi-talented, you're good in the kitchen, you're beautiful and rich, and you're talented in cultivation. Which man wouldn't like someone like you?" Lu Hanyan's beautiful eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. You really think so? Li Mu pointed to the sky and said, I swear on my Taoist heart. Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, Bah, who asked you to swear? Li Mu smiled and asked, You're not jealous now, are you? Really, you're even jealous of Wan Wan. Lu Hanyan blushed and snorted. Who's jealous? Li Mu realized that his previous understanding of Lu Hanyan was still somewhat wrong. When she was cute, she didn't lose to Wan Wan at all. With her talent, it was only a matter of time before she surpassed Li Qing. He was really blind to have been so focused on condensing his soul back then. At some point, the two of them had left the official road, and there was no one around. If it were anyone else, Lu Hanyan naturally wouldn't have followed them to such a desolate place. She just looked at Li Mu in confusion and asked, Why did you bring me here? After Li Mu confirmed that there was no one around, he said, Take out that hairpin. I said that your hairpins are different, but it's not what you think. Lu Hanyan took out the hairpin, and Li Mu formed the army formula with his hand. With a thought, the hairpin flew out from Lu Hanyan's hand and danced in the air. Li Mu's thought moved again, and the hairpin streaked across the air, piercing straight into a tree not far away. Poof! A small hole appeared on the trunk of the tree, through which light could penetrate. Lu Hanyan's red lips slightly opened, and she said in astonishment, Is this a magic weapon? Li Mu recalled the hairpin and asked, Are you still jealous? Lu Hanyan's pretty face turned red. She pinched his waist and said, Don't mention it. Li Si said that when a woman starts to not avoid physical contact, even if it's physical abuse, it means that the distance between two people has been greatly reduced. If a woman doesn't like you, she won't even bother to look at you. Li Mu rubbed the soft flesh on his waist, and his heart was slightly happy. He continued, I'll teach you the art of silence first, and then I'll teach you this Dao technique. Practice it every day, and in the future when you encounter danger, you'll be able to catch your opponent off guard. The use of the army formula was to use an extremely small amount of dermic powers to activate magic treasures. Originally, only cultivators above the transcendent realm could master this ability. Lu Hanyan's hairpin, compared to Li Mu's Bai sword, was lighter and more agile, and also more concealed. This hairpin itself is a magic weapon. If it pierces a person's heart or brain, it can be a one-hit kill. Even if it's a transcendent realm cultivator, if they're not prepared and this hairpin pierces a vital point, their body will instantly die. Lu Hanyan clumsily controlled the hairpin. She asked, Where did you get this hairpin? Li Mu said, I killed an evil spirit last time. I used my merit to exchange for it at the yamen. Lu Hanyan's gaze wandered. She asked, Why didn't you exchange it for something else? Li Mu did not answer this question. He said, Focus on practicing. I didn't even teach you this Dao technique. Lu Hanyan's eyes flashed with a hint of joy, but she said, What does it have to do with me whether you teach it to others or not? Women always say one thing and mean another. Previously, when Li Qing was angry, she also said the same thing. After practicing for a while, seeing that Lu Hanyan was already able to control the hairpin steadily, Li Mu formed the 6-ding Jade Maiden Mudra and said, Watch this Dao technique carefully. Combined with what I just taught you, you can kill a third realm cultivator. Boom! Just as he finished speaking, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky. After Li Mu's research during this period of time, he figured out how to use the confrontation formula and the army formula in combination. Using Lu Hanyan's jade hairpin as an example, he first used the army formula to destroy the enemy's physical body unexpectedly. Regardless of whether it was a demon or a human, once their vitals were pierced, their physical body would die instantly. As for third realm demons and assembled spirit cultivators, after their physical bodies died, their souls could still leave their bodies and survive. After the army formula, he followed up with the confrontation formula. One destroyed the body, the other destroyed the soul. This combination was clean and efficient. Under normal circumstances, the enemy would not even have the chance to react before their souls were scattered. Lu Hanyan's dermic powers were ultimately not as good as Li Mu's. After practicing for only 10 or so times, her dermic powers were depleted. Leaning against a tree, she could not even stand stably. Li Mu walked to her side and said, I forgot to tell you. Although Dao techniques don't consume much dermic powers, your dermic powers are still too weak. You can't practice for long periods of time. It's best to start with archery and throwing. Why didn't you say so earlier? Lu Hanyan leaned against the tree, her chest rising and falling slightly. She said unhappily, "My legs are wobbly now. How can I go back?" Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "How about I carry you?" Chapter 143. Although Lu Hanyan refused verbally, her body was very honest. Her physical strength and magic power were seriously overdrawn. If she didn't let Li Mu help, she could only crawl back. Li Mu gave her 3 choices. She could either hug, piggyback, or crawl back on her own. After thinking for a while, she still chose to let Li Mu piggyback her. She lay on Li Mu's back and hooked her arms around his neck. She said suspiciously, "Did you do it on purpose? Just now you kept telling me to practice more." "Li Mu, do you think I want to piggyback you? You're so heavy." Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "What do you know? It's not like the lighter a woman is, the better." She wasn't wrong. Women weighed less than 100, so they were either flat-chested or short. Lu Hanyan's chest was flat, and she wasn't short either. She was hinting to Li Mu that she had a good figure and where her flesh should be. Li Mu shook his head and said, "How would I know? It's my first time piggybacking a woman." Lu Hanyan curled her lips. "Isn't it my first time being piggybacked?" Li Mu piggybacked her and walked straight along the official road. Lu Hanyan rested her head on his back and suddenly asked, "What you said last time, is it true?" "Which one?" "You said that in 2 years if you and I haven't married, we'll be together." Li Mu's footsteps paused, and then he continued forward. "Of course it's true." Lu Hanyan said, "Didn't you say that I'm not your type?" "That's because I'm stubborn. Who wouldn't like someone like you?" Li Mu asked as he walked. "So you agree?" Lu Hanyan's lips curled up. "It depends on your performance in the future." Li Mu had been waiting for her to say this for a long time. He let out a sigh of relief, and his footsteps became lighter. Lu Hanyan said again, "However, I have another condition." Li Mu asked, "What conditions?" Lu Hanyan said, "Wan Wan and I will never be separated for the rest of our lives." Li Mu asked, "What do you mean?" Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "Don't play dumb. Don't think that I don't know that you had this idea from the beginning. When you used the barbecue to lure Wan Wan, you had this idea in your heart, right?" Li Mu defended himself. "I can swear to the heavens that at that time, I didn't have any thoughts about you." Lu Hanyan was jealous. "At that time, you were interested in Constable Li, weren't you?" Li Mu knew that she was starting to be jealous of Li Qing again. He changed the topic and asked, "When can we start the real dual cultivation?" As expected, Lu Hanyan's attention was diverted by this question. She said softly, "Don't even think about it now. We'll talk about it when you marry me." Li Mu actually didn't think about it now. There were too many resources that could be used to cultivate the lower 3 realms: soul power, courage, and spirit jades. Even if they didn't cultivate yin and yang dual cultivation, their cultivation speed wouldn't be too slow. After reaching the middle 3 realms, the effect of these resources would be minimal. Only then would the real effect of dual cultivation be revealed. Moreover, the first real dual cultivation was very important. It would be a great waste to integrate the primordial yang and primordial yin that they had accumulated for many years. Lu Hanyan was exhausted. Lying on Li Mu's back, her heart was very calm, and she soon fell asleep. She didn't wake up until Li Mu carried her home. Tonight, she probably didn't have the strength to do dual cultivation. Li Mu carried her to the bed in her room. When he walked out of the door, he said to Wan Wan, "Wan Wan, come with me to my room." The little maid followed him into the room. She lowered her head and rubbed the corner of her clothes. She asked, "Young master what's the matter?" Li Mu said, "Do you still remember that I told you that your eyes are very rare spirit eyes?" Wan Wan nodded and said, "I remember." Li Mu patted her head and said, "Although spirit eyes are rare, they can see things that ordinary people can't, especially some mean spirits and ghosts. So I sealed your spirit eyes. Now that you have mana, you can control your spirit eyes. I will help you remove the seal. In the future, you can cultivate your eyes according to the method I taught you." Wan Wan nodded obediently and said, "I will listen to you, young master." Old Wang once gave Li Mu a book on cultivating spirit eyes. He obtained more information from the memories of monk Chen Huan. He could help Wan Wan find a correct path to cultivate spirit eyes. Li Mu formed a seal with his hands and wiped Wan Wan's eyes. When she opened her eyes again, her eyes became clearer and brighter. It was like a whirlpool, as if it wanted to suck in Li Mu's entire mind. Li Mu quickly looked away, and that feeling disappeared. He was secretly shocked. Wan Wan had only cultivated 2 souls and unconsciously used spirit eyes. She could already make his mind tremble. When she learned how to use this talent, it would not be difficult for her to cross realms to control. Soul, body, and primordial spirit would be completely restrained by her. This made Li Mu realize that if he did not work hard, he would not be able to catch up to Lu Hanyan. Perhaps even Wan Wan could suppress him. When this task was completed, he planned to choose a magic treasure for Wan Wan. He wanted to be fair so that they would not think that he was biased. After Wan Wan left, Xiaobai jumped in through the window and onto the bed. She quietly crawled to Li Mu's side. These few days, Lu Hanyan stayed at his place. Li Mu did not have time to use the light of Buddha to remove the demonic aura in her body. The demonic aura in her body became more obvious. This did not seem to be a long-term solution. Li Mu helped her every night, but he could only help her for a while. It was better to let her cultivate on her own. Demons were actually similar to humans in their cultivation. They could learn human supernatural powers and Tao techniques. Many demons would also take the path of cultivation of Taoism or Buddhism. Their bodies were originally strong, so it was more suitable for them to cultivate Buddhist supernatural powers. After using Buddhism to cleanse the demonic aura in their body, not only would their bodies become stronger, but some supernatural powers that targeted demons would also be useless to them. However, Xiaobai had not yet transformed, so she could not cultivate human cultivation methods. Even if Li Mu wanted to teach her, he would have to wait until she transformed. For Li Mu, the most important thing right now was to investigate Spring Wind Pavilion. According to the Yaman's information, this pavilion was very likely to be related to Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. To be safe, Li Mu decided to make sufficient preparations before the official investigation. There was no need to go to the Yaman for the time being. After Li Mu woke up, he made breakfast and waited for Lu Hanyan and the others to wake up. Lu Hanyan had slept with Wan Wan last night. When she woke up and saw Li Mu, she asked in surprise, "You don't have to go to the Yaman today?" Li Mu replied, "I don't have to go these days." Lu Hanyan said, "That's good. After breakfast, let's go take a look at the shops together." With the help of the Su family, the branch of Yunyan Pavilion was progressing smoothly. Lu Hanyan bought 2 shops and recruited enough people. If all went well, the shops could open within a month. The operation of the music house and opera house was more troublesome than the bookstore and tea house. Perhaps because she felt that 4 shops were too exhausting, she only opened the bookstore and tea house in the county capital. There was no need to recruit musicians and performers, so it was much simpler. Li Mu also didn't want her to be too tired. The 2 shops were handed over to the shopkeepers to manage, so she could have more time to cultivate. In the future, it would be good to cook at home and take care of the children. Li Mu, Wan Wan, and Lu Hanyan were walking on the street. When the 2 girls passed by a jewelry shop, they planned to go in and pick a few pieces. Li Mu stood outside and waited for them. Opposite the jewelry shop was a brothel. Several women with heavy makeup were trying their best to solicit customers. "Young master, come in and take a look." "Shopkeeper Wang, a new batch of tea came in yesterday. Don't you want to try it?" "Young master Qian, several of our girls miss you." Li Mu's eyes swept over the women. He raised his head and saw the plaque, Spring Wind Pavilion, hanging above the brothel. A golden light flashed in his eyes, but he didn't see anything unusual about Spring Wind Pavilion. The brothel keeper and prostitutes at the door were all human women. There was no ghostly or demonic aura around Spring Wind Pavilion. Everything was normal. No matter how he looked at it, it was just an ordinary brothel. Most of the men coming out of Spring Wind Pavilion had gloomy faces. Their footsteps were weak, and their yang qi was lacking. They looked like normal brothel patrons. Seeing the handsome young man staring at them from the entrance of the jewelry store, a prostitute boldly approached and said with a smile, "Young master, You've been standing outside for so long. Do you want to go in and have some fun? Li Mu didn't have time to answer before a pain came from his waist. Lu Hanyan came out of the jewelry shop and held Li Mu's arm. She didn't look at the prostitute and said, "Wan Wan, let's go." Wan Wan glared at the prostitute. She stuck out her small chest and held Li Mu's other arm. With Lu Hanyan on the left and right, she almost carried Li Mu away. The prostitute shook her head, walked back, and once again tried to win over the passing men. Lu Hanyan held Li Mu's arm and asked coldly, "What do you think? Are they beautiful?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "They're dressed like ghosts. They're not beautiful." Lu Hanyan gritted her teeth and said, "If they're not beautiful, then why did you look for so long?" Li Mu couldn't refute and could only say, "I was just looking." "They're not beautiful, but you look at that kind of place. You men are really the same. I won't look next time." "Next time? There won't be a next time." Li Mu walked on the street with one arm held by Lu Hanyan and the other arm held by Wan Wan. Along the way, they attracted countless people's attention. Who knew how many people bumped into others because they turned around? Lu Hanyan seemed to have forgotten to let go. She held Li Mu like this, and Wan Wan on the other side didn't let go either. In the distance, Li Mu saw a familiar figure coming from the front. Li Si wasn't alone. There was a woman beside him. The woman was 5 feet tall and at least 3 feet wide. She held Li Si with a sweet face. Standing beside the woman, Li Si, who was 6 feet tall, looked like a little bird. Li Si obviously also saw Li Mu. He looked at Lu Hanyan on Li Mu's left, then looked at Wan Wan on Li Mu's right, and then looked at his own side. He looked up at the sky and tried hard not to cry. Chapter 144. Chen Miao Miao noticed Li Si's abnormality. She turned around and asked in confusion, "Li Si, what's wrong?" Li Si wiped his tears and said, "It's nothing. The wind is a little strong today. I think some sand got into my eyes." Chen Miao Miao said with concern, "Let me help you blow." "No need." Li Si said, "I'll be fine after I cry for a while." Lu Hanyan saw someone familiar and quickly let go of Li Mu's hand. Wan Wan also let go. Li Mu glanced at Li Si and smiled at Chen Miao Miao. "Miss Miao Miao is back." Chen Miao Miao looked at Li Mu in confusion. She quickly remembered and smiled. "It's you. We met in Yangqiu County." Li Mu didn't want to disturb Li Si and Chen Miao Miao's reunion. He smiled and said, "We still have some things to do. We won't disturb you. You can continue shopping." Ever since she met Chen Miao Miao, Wan Wan had a lot on her mind. Li Mu accompanied Lu Hanyan to look at the unfinished shop. Wan Wan couldn't help but ask, "Young mistress, will I look like Miss Miao Miao in the future?" "Just keep your little heart in your stomach." Lu Hanyan patted her head gently and comforted her. "Miss Miao Miao didn't want to be like this. She doesn't eat as much as you." She then looked at Li Mu and asked, "Is Li Si really together with Miss Miao Miao?" Li Mu had told her about Lin Wan's case and also about Li Si and Chen Miao Miao. He nodded and said, "I'm afraid he has no choice but to be together with her." Lu Hanyan said, "That's good too. Otherwise, he won't be doing his job and loitering around brothels." Actually, he wasn't like this before. Having received a lot of favors from Li Si, Li Mu decided to defend him. "In the past he was just like me. He wouldn't even take a second look at the brothels when he passed by. He has a fiancée named Qing Qing. Qing Qing and he are childhood sweethearts. He scrimps and saves every day, eating steamed buns and drinking water to save up his salary. He wants to gather enough betrothal gifts for Qing Qing." Lu Hanyan listened attentively and asked, "What happened next?" Li Mu said slowly, "Later, when he gathered all the betrothal gifts, Qing Qing had already married a rich man as a concubine. She despised Li Si for being too poor and unable to give her the life she wanted." Lu Hanyan frowned and said, "The life you want depends on your own efforts. It's fine if you don't marry this kind of woman. She doesn't have any self-reliance and self-respect. She deserves to be a man's vassal for the rest of her life. It's not worth it for him to fall for such a woman." With Lu Hanyan's own experience, it was normal for her to look down on these women who worshipped money. Li Mu said, "Men can't forget their first love. Qing Qing was the first woman Li Si liked. The deeper the love, the deeper the hurt. Ching 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 ching. Lu Hanyan seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Li Mu and asked, "So, you also can't forget Arrestor Li?" Li Mu looked around and suddenly said, "Wan Wan, are you hungry? Let's go eat." The prefectural minister's manner. Chen Miao Miao sent Li Si back to his room and said, "If there's anything else you need, just tell me. I'll have my father prepare it." Li Si was silent for a moment. He turned his head to look at her and said, "Actually, there's something I've been hiding from you." Chen Miao Miao was stunned and asked, "What is it?" Li Si said, "My name isn't Li Si. My name is Li Si." Chen Miao Miao asked doubtfully, Then when we first met, why did you say your name was Li Shan?" "To hide my identity and purpose." Li Si's eyes were apologetic. He said, "In order to bring Zhao Yong to justice, I had no choice but to lie to you." Chen Miao Miao's face gradually paled. She muttered, "So you've been lying to me all this time?" "You've never liked me?" Li Si didn't answer directly. He only sighed and said, "You're a good girl with a good family background and a kind heart. I'm just a small bailiff. I only have a salary of 500 coins a month and I often hang around brothels. I'm not as good as you think." Chen Miao Miao shook her head and said, "I don't care about your past or your identity. I only care if you're sincere to me." Li Si said, "I'm so poor that I can't even support myself. You won't be happy if you follow me." Chen Miao Miao raised her head and said, "As long as I can be with the person I like, I'll be happy. If you feel uncomfortable here, we can go back to Yangqiu County. If you can't support me, then I'll support you. I can pawn those gold and silver jewelry and exchange it for money. It's enough for us to live. We can also do a small business. We can live well without father's care." Li Si stared at her in a daze. The image of a woman nestled in someone else's arms, ignoring his pleas, and closing the vermilion door appeared before his eyes once more. "You're just a small bailiff. You won't have any future in your life. I won't be happy if I follow you." The woman's words were still deeply engraved in his heart. He looked at Chen Miao Miao and suddenly laughed. Li Si raised his hand and wiped away her tears. He said, "Everything I've said to you is true." Chen Miao Miao smiled through her tears. She held his hand and said, "I'm also true. I'm willing to go to Yangqiu County with you because I want to suffer with you." Li Si shook his head and said, "You're willing to suffer with me, but I'm not willing to let you suffer. Let's stay in the county capital." In the past few days, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan's relationship had warmed up daily. Although she would ask some questions about death from time to time, under Li Si's influence and guidance, they were able to survive each dangerous situation safely. When he saw Li Si again, Li Mu was shocked. 3 days ago, he was only an ordinary person without any mana. 3 days later, he had already refined the 3 souls. The saber at his waist had also been replaced with a treasured saber. He looked at Li Si and said in shock, "You've really made up your mind?" Li Si nodded and said, "I've made up my mind. Miao Miao is a good girl. I can't let her down." The prodigal son had turned over a new leaf and the Sea King had come ashore. It was a joyous occasion. Li Mu clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations." Li Si shook his head and said, "However, father-in-law also has a condition. He wants me to cultivate to at least the transcendent realm before marrying Miao Miao. If Li Si cultivated alone, it would probably take him at least 20 years to reach the middle realm. However, with his speed of refining 1 soul per day, if his rich and powerful father-in-law was willing to spend unlimited cultivation resources on him, his cultivation could reach the transcendent realm within 2 years. Although his battle prowess could not compare to a normal transcendent realm cultivator, his cultivation was at the middle realm. Li Si asked, "How's your matter?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It's just a matter of time. I said that sooner or later, you two will fall in love with each other." Li Si's expression showed that he understood and asked again, "However, have you really thought it through? Are you sure you won't regret it in the future?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Why would I regret it?" Li Si looked at him and nodded slightly. "Cherish what you can now. Let's talk about the future later." The two walked on the street. When they passed by Spring Wind Pavilion, Li Si looked straight ahead while Li Mu glanced at it. Li Si said in surprise, "You're not interested in this kind of place, are you?" You think I'm you? Li Mu shook his head and said, there's a very important case related to this brothel. Li Si looked back at Spring Wind Pavilion. After a while, he nodded and said, there is indeed a problem with this brothel. Li Mu's heaven's eye and insight couldn't see the problem with this brothel. He looked at Li Si and asked in surprise, what did you see? Li Si said, the girls here are not real brothel girls. When I first came here, they actually took my money. Li Mu asked, you talked about life with them? Li Si said, yes. There really is a problem. Li Mu whispered and looked at Spring Wind Pavilion. You go first. I'll go in and take a look. Be careful. Li Si left directly. Li Mu turned and walked into Spring Wind Pavilion. On the other side of the street, Zhang Shan saw Li Si and Li Mu walking side by side. He was about to say hello, but just as he raised his arm, he froze. He saw Li Si walk past the street without stopping, and Li Mu walk into the brothel without hesitation. He rubbed his eyes and murmured, damn, I must be too tired these 2 days. I can't even tell Li Si and Li Mu apart. Lu Hanyan came out of a bookstore and saw Zhang Shan standing at the door. She asked, what's wrong? Zhang Shan shook his head and said, nothing, my eyes are a bit blurry. Chapter 145. Spring Wind Pavilion. As soon as Li Mu walked in, the brothel keeper greeted him with a smile. Young master, do you know any girls? Would you like me to recommend them to you? Li Mu. It's my first time here. The smile on the brothel keeper's face became bigger. Oh, it's a new guest. Today, you must serve the young master well. Xiang Xiang, Qiao Qiao, Rong Rong, you 3 come here. Several girls were called over by the brothel keeper. The brothel keeper approached Li Mu and asked with a smile, these 3 are the top girls in our shop. They are proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Young master, which one do you like? Li Mu took a step back, keeping a distance from the brothel keeper, and looked at the 3 girls opposite him. Of the 3, one was petite and cute, one had a hot figure, and one was tall and cold. Li Mu thought for a moment, pointed to the 3rd one and said, she is, the brothel keeper said. Rong Rong, why don't you lead the young master upstairs? Young master, please. The cold woman said coldly to Li Mu and turned to go upstairs. Although it was Li Mu's first time in a brothel, he knew that the attitude of a brothel woman to a guest was not like this. Li Si and Li Mu had said this kind of trick was just one of the methods they used to attract guests. This woman was not really cold. This was just her character. After all, the guests who could choose her were generally a little masochistic. They liked this kind of cold type, which made them more excited. The woman opened the door of a room and led Li Mu in. Then, she sat on the edge of the bed and pretended to be unapproachable. Li Mu walked to her side and asked, can you play the zither? The woman was stunned for a moment and shook her head. Can you play the flute? The woman continued to shake her head. How about the pipa? The woman still shook her head. Li Mu waved his hand and said, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you have the nerve to say that you're proficient in everything. Go down and tell the brothel keeper to get someone who can do these things. The woman was stunned for a moment. Then, she suddenly stood up and walked downstairs angrily. She said to the procuress, there's a strange person here. He doesn't do what he should do and only wants to listen to music. Is he crazy? Who would come to a brothel to listen to music? I can't take this job. In this world, there are all kinds of hobbies. I usually ask you to practice the zither, but you don't listen. Now you're blaming the customer. The brothel keeper shook her head and said to the voluptuous woman, Qiao Qiao, you go. Li Mu sat in the room for a while. The plump woman named Qiao Qiao, whom the brothel keeper had introduced just now, swayed her hips and walked in. She hugged Guqin and asked with a smile, young master, what song do you want me to play? Li Mu. Just play whatever you know. The woman put the Guqin aside and began to take off her clothes. Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, if you want to play the zither, then play the zither. Why are you taking off your clothes? The plump woman was startled and asked, do I have to wear it and play it? Li Mu waved his hand and said, wear it. The woman looked at him strangely. She could only sit down and play the zither with both hands. This woman's zither skills could only be regarded as a beginner. But it was still incomparable to Lu Hanyen. Li Mu was used to Lu Hanyen playing the zither. Listening to her again, it was somewhat boring. The woman played the zither and found that there was no movement beside the bed. She looked up and found that the young customer was lying on the bed asleep. She couldn't help but feel strange. In the past few months, she had served a lot of customers, but this was the first time she met someone like him. He came to the brothel and didn't look for physical entertainment. He only listened to music and fell asleep. However, she was not too surprised. She had seen men with all kinds of hobbies. Some people's hobbies in this area were so abnormal that it made people's hair stand on end. Compared to them, this young master was nothing. She played for a while and saw that the other party had fallen asleep. Her fingers left the strings, stood up, and lit an incense burner. As the incense burner emitted green smoke, a trace of weak yang qi drifted out from Li Mu's body and was absorbed into the incense burner. After doing this, the woman walked to the bed and looked at Li Mu's face. She murmured, "You look so handsome, where can't you find a woman? Why did you come to this kind of place?" She gently stroked Li Mu's face and sighed. "What a handsome young master." Li Mu, who was lying on the bed, already knew what this brothel was doing secretly. They were the same as the green snake, sucking people's yang qi. However, the green snake was obviously not smart enough. It only grabbed one person and sucked. Naturally, it was easy to reveal flaws and be noticed by the authorities. And the same method of sucking people's yang qi, this brothel's method was much more brilliant. The customers who came here were originally here to have fun. Coincidentally, their way of having fun was also very physically and mentally exhausting. This way, even if they lost some yang qi, no one would notice. The lack of yang qi was not much different from the lack of kidney qi. They didn't need to absorb too much from a person. As long as the brothel was open, there would be an endless stream of customers. The yang qi was inexhaustible. This woman was not a demon ghost, nor was she a cultivator. She mainly relied on that strange incense burner to absorb yang qi. In order not to arouse suspicion, Li Mu took the initiative to release a trace of yang qi for her to absorb. He also didn't absorb too much of this woman's lust, so that she wouldn't feel the slightest discomfort. In the process of carrying out his task, he didn't forget to take advantage of her. After all, whether or not she could complete the collection of yang qi and successfully condense the sixth essence depended on this. Li Mu didn't know where the yang qi absorbed by the incense burner went. He was only here today to find out. During this period, he would probably become a regular here. After all, the county government didn't want to destroy this place. They wanted to secretly investigate and find out the secret of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. He had absorbed enough of yang qi. If he continued, this woman would notice. Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief and slowly opened his eyes. "Young master, you're awake." The woman sat by the bed and smiled. "Do you want me to help you bathe?" "No need. I just want to sleep for a while." Li Mu said, "I haven't been sleeping well these few days. After listening to your song, I feel much better. I'll look for you again next time." The woman stared blankly as Li Mu got off the bed, put on his shoes and walked out. She sat by the bed and said in surprise, "That's it?" "That's it?" Downstairs, Li Mu looked at the brothel keeper and asked, "Listening to a song costs 1 tael of silver?" The brothel keeper smiled and said, "1 tael of silver is cheap. If young master goes to the music house and orders the ladies, it will be even more expensive." Li Mu didn't talk nonsense with the brothel keeper. He simply took out the money. He knew that this kind of place was expensive, but he didn't expect it to be so expensive. This money must be reimbursed by the government office later. The plump woman came down from upstairs and said, "This young master is really strange. He just listened to a song and slept." The brothel keeper didn't care and said, "There are all kinds of people in this world. It's not strange after seeing many of them." After she said that, she asked a question without rhyme or reason. "You didn't forget, right?" The plump woman nodded and said, "I didn't forget." The brothel keeper said, "That's good. Go outside and get customers." Li Mu walked out of Spring Wind Pavilion. He didn't go to the government office, nor did he go home. First, he walked around for a while to see if anyone was following him. It was difficult for a normal man to go to a brothel to listen to music without arousing suspicion. But this was something that couldn't be helped. Arrestor Zhao's intention was to let him put on a show and be a dedicated undercover agent. He had to make the show real and use real guns and real bullets. Of course, Li Mu couldn't accept it. For a mission, he lost the primordial young energy that he had saved for 19 years. It was a bloody loss. His primordial young energy was reserved for Lu Hanyan. On the street of June City, at the door of a tea house, Lu Hanyan looked at the door of Spring Wind Pavilion and asked Zhang Shan, "Did Li Mu just come out from inside?" Zhang Shan quickly shook his head and said, "No, I didn't see him. You must have mistaken him for someone else." When Li Mu returned home, Lu Hanyan was sitting in the courtyard with her back to him. Wan Wan stood beside her and kept winking at Li Mu. Lu Hanyan turned to look at him and asked, "Where did you go at noon?" Li Mu said, "I didn't do anything." "Nothing." Lu Hanyan stood up and looked at him with disappointment. "Wan Wan and I saw you come out of the brothel with our own eyes." Li Mu was startled and explained, Lu Hanyan said sadly, "What about you? Don't tell me that you went to the brothel just to listen to music?" Li Mu was silent for a moment. He looked at her and said helplessly, "If I said that I really just listened to a song, would you believe me?" Lu Hanyan didn't say anything. Li Mu didn't expect that he would be caught red-handed doing a proper job. Times had changed. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have needed to explain to Lu Hanyan. But it was different now. If he didn't explain, the wife he was about to pursue might run away. Li Mu looked pleadingly at the little fox and said, "Xiao Bai, you're the only one who can prove my innocence now." Xiao Bai understood and jumped onto the table. She said to Lu Hanyan, "Big sister Lu, you misunderstood. Nothing really happened with our benefactor." Lu Hanyan said angrily, "You're still speaking up for him at this point." "No, I'm not siding with our benefactor." Xiao Bai leaned close to Lu Hanyan's ear and whispered a few words. Lu Hanyan was stunned for a moment. She said in disbelief, "You can tell?" Xiao Bai nodded and said, "This is the talent of our clan. Our benefactor still has his vitality." Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan and said, "I swear, I went to the brothel today for an errand. I came back after listening to a song. I didn't even touch those girls." Lu Hanyan already believed him, but she still said stubbornly, "What errand required you to go to the brothel?" Li Mu didn't answer. He just shook his head and said, "You don't trust me. You've disappointed me." He ignored Lu Hanyan and went straight to his room. After a while, Lu Hanyan walked in from outside and whispered, "I was wrong." Li Mu glanced at her. "What was wrong?" Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, "I shouldn't have mistrusted you." Li Mu snorted and said, "Is one wrong enough?" Lu Hanyan thought for a moment and threw him on the bed. She kissed him lightly on the lips and asked, "I gave you my first kiss. Is that enough?" Li Mu pursed his lips and said, "You can make a few more mistakes next time." "In your dreams." Lu Hanyan sat up again and asked, "Was this your first kiss too?" Li Mu thought for a moment and nodded. "You're also the first woman I kissed." Chapter 146. Lu Hanyan was the first and only woman Li Mu had ever kissed. Suhi was a ghost, not a human. At that time, Li Mu's life was in danger. He was almost killed by Thousand Illusions' venerable master's soul power. He was in a coma and didn't have time to think about other things. Thinking of Suhi, he didn't know if she had come out of seclusion or if she had received the two ghosts Li Mu had sent her. Lu Hanyan was keenly aware of something and asked Li Mu, "What are you thinking about?" Li Mu quickly came back to his senses and said, "You kissed me too quickly. I wasn't ready yet. Do you want to do it again?" "In your dreams." Lu Hanyan left in a hurry with a red face. Li Mu was relieved. Haste makes waste, and Lu Hanyan couldn't eat hot tofu. She took the initiative to kiss Li Mu, which was already a big step forward in their relationship. If Li Mu took an inch and wanted a mile, it would have the opposite effect. Let nature take its course. One day, the two of them would be able to completely give themselves to each other. Being caught by Lu Hanyan in the act of going to the brothel was also good. In the future, he could openly enter Spring Wind Pavilion without worrying about Lu Hanyan being angry. During the day, He only saw that the brothel was using some kind of utensils to absorb the yang energy of the customers. At night, Li Mu went to Spring Wind Pavilion again. As usual, he called a woman to play the zither while he slept on the bed. When the woman saw that Li Mu was sleeping, the zither gradually slowed down and stopped. She glanced at the sleeping Li Mu, picked up the incense burner, and left the room. When she left, she didn't notice that a paper figurine the size of her pinky was stuck to the bottom of her shoe. With the sound of the door closing, Li Mu, who had long since fallen asleep on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. Paper dolls were a secret technique of the Fulu school. Originally, only the disciples of the Fulu school could make them. Li Mu had found the method to make them from the memories of the Thousand Illusions' venerable master. The paper dolls created through the Fulu method could replace the owner to do some things. They could also be used to explore dangerous places. They had a wide range of uses. With the aid of the paper doll, he could hear the voices around the woman. In his ears, other than the sound of gentle footsteps, there were occasional moans of men and women. As the woman walked down the stairs and into the backyard, Li Mu's ears finally quieted down. Spring Wind Pavilion. Backyard. The woman carried the incense burner to an ancient well. The brothel keeper of Spring Wind Pavilion was guarding the well. The woman slowly walked over and handed the incense burner to her. The procuress took the incense burner and said, "You stay here and guard. Don't let any outsiders come in." The woman nodded respectfully and stood at the mouth of the well. The procuress held the incense burner and looked around. Seeing that there was no one in the courtyard, she directly jumped into the well. Li Mu was lying on the bed in the room. He didn't know what was going on around the woman. After the procuress's voice disappeared, there was no more sound. With the help of the paper doll, the range of hearing was limited. Li Mu was too far away from the woman, so his hearing couldn't work. He thought for a moment, got down from the bed, went around the back door, and flashed into the backyard. He covered his stomach and ran around. The woman found him and said in panic, "Young master, why did you come down?" Li Mu's face turned red. "Latrine, where is the latrine?" The woman pointed to the corner and said, "The latrine is there." Li Mu ran into the latrine in the corner of the courtyard. The woman looked at the latrine and then at the mouth of the well. She slowly put down a wooden bucket. Li Mu closed the latrine door and silently recited the clear heart chant to eliminate all disturbances. Finally, with his hearing, he vaguely heard some sounds. The sound came from underground. Li Mu thought of the dry well in the courtyard. He was sure that there was a problem with the well. Ghost General, last place, sacrifice, Yang Qi. The sound coming from underground was very weak. Li Mu could roughly hear it. He was worried that if he stayed too long, he would be discovered and affect his plan. After listening for a moment, he walked out of the latrine, left 1 silver, and left Spring Wind Pavilion. A moment later, in the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion, the woman lifted the wooden bucket and the procuress's body slowly floated out of the well. He looked at the woman and asked, "No one came here, right?" The woman shook her head. The nervousness on the procuress's face disappeared. She swayed her body and left. The woman left as well. As she walked, the paper dolls under her feet gradually turned to dust and disappeared. Half a month passed in a flash. In this half a month, everything in Spring Wind Pavilion was normal. The only difference was that every day, a young master would come here and pick a girl. He would only listen to music and sleep, not doing the things that men and women like to do. At first, everyone was a little strange, but after a long time, they became accustomed to it. Many of the guests who came here had strange fetishes. Some had a special liking for women's feet, some liked to be whipped by girls, and some liked to wear girls' underwear. Compared to them, the young master's hobbies were nothing. Yangqiu County Government. Li Mu, wearing a cloak, entered from the back door and went to the guardroom. In this half a month, he went to Spring Wind Pavilion every day and secretly investigated some information. At the same time, he also accumulated a lot of lust. Almost all the prostitutes in Spring Wind Pavilion had been sucked by him. He sat in the guardroom for a while. Not long after, Constable Zhao came in from outside. He walked in front of Li Mu and asked, "How's the investigation?" Li Mu nodded and said, "After more than half a month of secret investigation, I found that behind Spring Wind Pavilion, There is indeed a ghost general under Chu Jiang of Gojosian controlling it. Her hiding place is in the well in the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion. Constable Zhao said, the ghost Qi is hidden in the well. No wonder you can't see anything strange from the outside. Li Mu continued. The procuress and prostitutes of Spring Wind Pavilion should have been bewitched by her long ago. They secretly absorbed the yang qi of the guests for her to cultivate. Demonic ghosts could not only eat people, but they were also good at bewitching people. Those who were bewitched by them would completely become their slaves, unable to have the slightest disloyalty. Constable Zhao asked, why did this ghost take the risk to cause trouble in the county capital? Did you find the reason? I found it. Li Mu nodded and said, the 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojosian are not fixed. As long as the ghost soldiers under him are strong enough, they can replace their positions at any time. Not only that, Chu Jiang of Gojosian also set a cruel rule for the 18 ghost generals. Constable Zhao asked, what rule? Li Mu continued, within a certain period of time, the last ghost general who has not reached the spirit realm will be used as a sacrifice. His spirit will be erased and his soul will be sacrificed. In the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion, the female ghost under the well has the strength of a peak evil spirit, almost reaching the spirit realm. She absorbs the yang qi of these people in order to advance. If she succeeds in advancing to the spirit realm, she will not have to worry about being sacrificed. Although the strength of a peak evil spirit ranked at the bottom of the 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojosian, it was not the last. The culprit who made the female ghost so nervous was actually Li Mu. Before he killed the ghost general was ranked last among the 18 ghost generals. After he killed the ghost general, the female ghost became the last. If she didn't work hard, her intelligence would be erased and she would become someone else's nourishment. Chu Jiang of Gojosian could think of such a way to motivate his employees. He was a genius. Constable Zhao asked, did you find out the secret of Chu Jiang of Gojosian? No. Li Mu shook his head and said, if Chu Jiang of Gojosian really has a secret, I'm afraid it's not something a low-level ghost general can know. That's true. Constable Zhao nodded and said, continue to investigate first. Once you have any news, immediately report to the county government. Li Mu had a troubled look on his face. Constable Zhao asked, what's the problem? Li Mu said, the expenses at Spring Wind Pavilion are too expensive. From start to finish, I have already spent more than 10 taels of silver. I can't keep paying like this. How about the yamen give me some in advance? Constable Zhao said in surprise. Didn't they say that you hooked up with a rich woman, lived in a big house and wore clothes of the best quality? Li Mu froze for a moment and said angrily, who leaked? Who spread the rumor? Constable Zhao smiled and said, I only heard about it. The yamen should pay for these taels of silver. I'll go to the treasury later to get it for you. Constable Zhao left the guardroom and quickly came back. He gave Li Mu 30 taels of silver and said, take these 30 taels of silver first. If it's not enough, come to the yamen to get more. Li Mu took the taels of silver and thought that he could be extravagant today. He could order 2 girls, one to play the zither, one to play the flute, and one to play the zither and flute. Anyway, the yamen would reimburse him. If he exceeded the budget, he could apply again. After Constable Zhao finished speaking, he took out another item and handed it to Li Mu. He said, the female ghost at the peak of the evil spirit realm is not to be underestimated. If things change, you might have to confront her directly. Take this magic weapon and return it when you're done. Li Mu looked down at the item in his hand. It looked like a soft branch, light as if it was weightless. He looked at Constable Zhao and asked, what is this? Constable Zhao explained, this item is called the Soul Beating Whip. It's made from a 1,000-year-old willow branch and can cause great damage to souls and primordial spirits. With one whip, an ordinary een spirit or resentful spirit will die and scatter. Even if it's an evil spirit, it won't feel good if it gets whipped. As long as you use this whip to delay the female ghost for a moment and send a message in time, the yamen's reinforcements will arrive immediately. Li Mu's eyes lit up. The whip's restraint on souls was even stronger than his Bai sword. After using it, he had to figure out a way to get it. It would be a good idea to give it to Wan Wan for self-defense. Constable Zhao saw the light in his eyes and coughed softly. He said, this is something from the yamen. I'm only lending it to you temporarily. You have to return it when you're done with it. Li Mu smiled and said, I understand, I understand. He put away the soul-beating whip and thought for a moment. He asked again, if something from the yamen is broken or lost in the process of carrying out a task, do I have to pay for it? Chapter 147. If he could get a free meal, Li Mu certainly wouldn't want to waste the opportunity to choose a reward. Unfortunately, Constable Zhao mercilessly told him that if something was lost or broken, he would have to pay for it. The value of each magic weapon couldn't be measured by the money of the secular world. If it had to be converted into silver, it would be at least 1,000 taels of silver. Although Lu Hanyan didn't lack this 1,000 taels of silver, she certainly wouldn't allow Li Mu to be so prodigal. Li Mu temporarily dispelled the idea of stealing this magic weapon. He put away the soul-beating whip. As long as he didn't activate it, no aura would leak out, and he wasn't afraid of being sensed by the evil spirit. Spring Wind Pavilion. When Li Mu walked in again, the brothel keeper greeted him and said with familiarity, Oh, young master, are you going to order some more chow chow this time? Li Mu had just received the special funds from the yamen, so he generously said, I'll order 2 this time. You can arrange it as you see fit. The brothel keeper said, if it's 2, you'll have to pay more. In any case, the money would have to be returned. 1 more person meant 1 more person. Li Mu waved his hand and said, Fine, I'll pay more. Do I look like someone who can't afford to pay more? Of course not. The brothel keeper's face was full of smiles. She beckoned the 2 women and said, Hua Hua, Huan Huan, you 2 accompany the young master. After entering the room, Li Mu had 1 woman play the zither and the other massage his legs. After a while, he had them switch places. The woman who was massaging his legs went to play the zither, and the woman who was playing the zither massaged his legs. In this way, he could evenly and continuously absorb the lust of the 2. It had to be said that this body was simply a sharp tool to harvest lust. He could cultivate by lying down every day. Li Mu closed his eyes as if he was enjoying himself, but his mind had already followed the brothel keeper to the bottom of the well. The silver he had just given to the brothel keeper had already been tampered with by him. There was a paper man at the bottom of the silver, and a layer of silver powder. As long as the silver powder wasn't deliberately scraped off, the paper man wouldn't be found. The procuress carried the money with her. This time, Li Mu heard the voice very clearly through the paper figurine. Spring Wind Pavilion's backyard, under the well. This well was dry and devoid of water, but there was another space. In a small space under the well, there were tables, chairs, and cabinets. Nothing was lacking. A red-clothed woman was lazily lying on a bed. On the cabinet in front of the bed, there were several incense burners. The red-clothed woman gently took a deep breath. White smoke rose from the incense burners and was slowly sucked into her nose. After inhaling the smoke, a satisfied look appeared on her face. The procuress stood respectfully in front of the bed. After she finished inhaling the smoke, she replaced the incense burner with the other one. The woman in red took a few deep breaths and said, You don't have to send any more incense burners down. The ones in the room can also be removed. Hearing this, the brothel keeper's face lit up. She asked, Madam, are you finally going to be promoted? The woman in red exhaled and said, It's too late. The procuress was surprised. How can it be too late? The woman in red said, In 3 days, His Highness will summon all the ghost generals. According to the news I received, a month ago, the green-faced ghost was killed by someone. There are only 17 ghost generals left. Without him, I'm the last of the ghost generals. If I can't advance to the spirit realm in 3 days, I will become His Highness' sacrifice. The procuress hurriedly asked, What does Madam plan to do? The woman in red got out of bed and said, Fortunately, I'm only 1 step away from the spirit realm. As long as I absorb the young souls of all the men in this building, I can immediately advance. The procuress was worried, but if Madam does this, I'm afraid you won't be able to hide it for long. The yamen will soon know. The woman in red said, These heartless men who only think with their lower bodies deserve to die. After I absorb them, I will leave here. You all should also run for your lives. On the bed in a room on the 2nd floor of Spring Wind Pavilion, Li Mu suddenly opened his eyes. The woman who was massaging his legs was surprised. Young master, did I hurt you? Li Mu said, It's none of your business. You can leave first. I want to sleep alone. The two of them stood up and silently left the room. The moment the door closed, Li Mu got up from the bed and crushed a communication jade token without hesitation. After his investigation and the information collected by the Yamen over the past few years about Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and the 18 ghost generals, he found that the one who was hiding in Spring Wind Pavilion and absorbing the yang energy of the brothel guests was an evil ghost called Lustful Man, under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. The one Li Mu killed was called Green-Faced Ghost. Lustful Man and Green-Faced Ghost were ranked very low among the 18 ghost generals. Li Mu thought that Lustful Man would be obedient and slowly absorb the yang energy. He didn't expect that he would kill Green-Faced Ghost and force Lustful Man into a desperate situation. 3 days later, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon would summon the ghost generals. At that time, Lustful Man would have to die again if he couldn't advance to the soul realm. Therefore, she was prepared to risk everything and use the brothel guests in exchange for a chance to advance. This brothel was under her control. Even if the guests died in the brothel, they would be discovered at least at night or even the next day. It would take time for the jade token to send a message and for reinforcements to arrive. During this time, Lustful Man would have absorbed many people. Li Mu didn't have time to hesitate. He pushed the door open and went downstairs. He walked down the stairs and saw a woman in red walking out of the backyard with the procuress. The woman in red had an ordinary face. She looked like an ordinary woman, but Li Mu felt that she was very dangerous. Li Mu's mind raced. In the next moment, he walked in front of the procuress and said, I've been here so many times. Today, I don't want to listen to music. I want to eat meat. The procuress naturally knew what it meant to eat meat. She smiled and said, Young master, who do you like? I'll arrange it for you. Li Mu pointed at the woman in red and said, I want her. The procuress's expression changed and she laughed dryly. This won't do. Li Mu threw over an ingot of silver and said, Why not? Do you have money that you don't want to earn here? The old woman was about to speak when the woman in red took the silver and said with a smile, As long as you don't mind me being old, I'm willing to accompany you for a while. The procuress's lips moved, but she didn't dare to say anything. Li Mu smiled at the woman in red and said, Let's go. Seeing the two of them go up the stairs one after another, the procuress shook her head and said, He's so handsome. What a pity, she sighed and said to a woman beside her, Let everyone stand outside. Today we'll attract more guests. On the second floor, Li Mu led the woman in red in and turned to close the door. In order to prevent this female ghost from killing others, he could only take the risk. However, wealth came from danger. This female ghost wanted to suck Li Mu's yang qi, and Li Mu also wanted to suck her lust. That green snake made Li Mu want to eat it. He had long wanted to find a more powerful demon ghost to harvest. This woman was only one step away from the soul realm. If he sucked her lust, and coupled with the gains from Li Mu's brothel during this period of time, it should be enough for him to condense the seventh soul. In this way, among the 7 souls, he only lacked the 5th soul. Fei Du, the woman in red, walked to the bed and leaned against it. She said, Young master, you have to take pity on me. Li Mu walked to the bed and pretended to untie his belt. The woman in red sucked gently, and the yang qi in Li Mu's body dissipated and was sucked into her body. She coveted Li Mu's yang qi, so she would definitely have desire for Li Mu. Li Mu took a deep breath. The strong power of lust made him intoxicated. In order to make her more lust, Li Mu controlled the yang qi and poured it out of his body. He had already refined the 5 souls and had a pure yang body. The yang qi in his body was very abundant. This loss was nothing. The woman in red had a strange look in her eyes. The yang qi of the person in front of her was completely different from the yang qi of those men. Not only was it endless, but it also played a far better role in her cultivation than ordinary men. A greedy look appeared on her face as she increased the speed of her absorption. Li Mu's belt was still not untied. The speed of his absorption increased as well. Suddenly, a suspicious look appeared on the woman in red's face. After absorbing so much yang qi, not only did she not feel excited, she even felt a little weak. Li Mu had absorbed enough of the lust. Seeing that the ghost was suspicious, he raised his hand without hesitation and flung out a whip shadow from his sleeve, lashing the woman in red. The woman in red could not dodge at all and was instantly whipped. Sizzle! When the soul-striking whip struck her, a black mark appeared on her body. Wisps of ghostly chi spread out from the mark. You're a cultivator. The woman in red's face was filled with anger. After coming to her senses, she stabbed her 2 ghostly claws at Li Mu's body. Li Mu was already prepared. As he retreated quickly, he lashed out with his whip again. Another black mark appeared on the woman's hand. Her face was extremely ferocious. She let out an angry roar and no longer bothered with Li Mu. She turned into a cloud of black mist and broke out of the window. She had actually escaped. Li Mu walked to the window and sensed a powerful aura. It was chasing after Lei Feng. Since the county governor had already made his move, Li Mu did not need to chase after her. He walked to the door and knocked out the procuress who had heard the commotion in the room and was about to come in to check. Many constables rushed in from the door and subdued all the brothel girls who did not know what had happened. Constable Zhao walked in and said, "The county governor has personally chased after her. She can't escape. Why did you suddenly clash with her? Did she find out?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "In 3 days, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon will gather all the ghost generals. The woman in red does not want to be sacrificed and is prepared to risk everything. She will kill everyone in the brothel and suck their yang qi and blood. I had no choice but to lure her into the room and send you a message at the same time." Constable Zhao patted him on the shoulder and said, "Well done. When we return to the county office, you will be rewarded. Can you return the soul-striking whip first?" Lu Hanyan said, "Isn't that the case? Shallow. Do you think I'm Zhang Shan who only has eyes for money?" Li Mu looked at her and said, "I like you because of your knowledge, gentleness, generosity, kindness, consideration, independence, talent, beauty, and dignity. Do you also say the same to those prostitutes?" Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Mu, but her wrist involuntarily wrapped around his. The Yunyan Pavilion would officially open in 2 days. She had nothing to do, so she held Li Mu's arm and followed him all the way to the county yamen. A few constables gathered the prostitutes in a room and removed the female ghost's charm on them. After a quarter of an hour, these women came out of the room. Although their faces were a little pale, their eyes were less rigid and more lively. Several women came over and bowed to Li Mu, gratefully saying, "Thank you for saving us. If it weren't for you, we would have been bewitched by that evil ghost for the rest of our lives." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "I'm a constable. This is what I should do." The brothel keeper of Spring Wind Pavilion was even more excited. She ran over and said to Li Mu, "If it weren't for you, our Spring Wind Pavilion would be finished. If you come to Spring Wind Pavilion in the future, you can order whoever you want. I promise you that I won't charge you a single cent." Li Mu was a little emotional. He never thought that one day he would be treated like Li Si in a brothel. Then he felt the temperature around him drop, and a chill rose from his heart. He said with a straight face, "There's no need for that." The brothel keeper thought Li Mu didn't believe her, so she quickly said, "You can come over today. I'll let your favorite Chow Chow and Rong Rong serve you together." "Chow Chow, Rong Rong, why aren't you coming over?" Constable Zhao looked at the 2 women coming over and said to Li Mu meaningfully, "One is cold and proud, and the other is beautiful beyond compare. You really know how to choose." Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu with a smile and asked, "So that's what you like? Between Chow Chow and Rong Rong, who do you like more?" This was a question of death with only one correct answer. Chow Chow had a proud figure, while Rong Rong was cold and arrogant. If Li Mu dared to say that he preferred the cold and arrogant one, he would have to sleep alone tonight. He cleared his throat and was about to speak when the brothel keeper spoke first. "I think His Excellency likes Rong Rong more. The first time he came, he took a fancy to Rong Rong at first sight." Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and said, "I'll go back first." Constable Zhao didn't understand. Li Si patted Li Mu's shoulder and said, "The devil is hidden in the details. You deserve it." When the brothel girls left the yamen, they looked at Li Mu reluctantly and said, "His Excellency, we'll wait for you at Spring Wind Pavilion." Li Mu could somewhat understand how Li Si felt before, but he didn't want this feeling. Just as he was about to chase after Lu Hanyan, a figure came from outside. Commandant Shen walked into the yamen, holding a thick iron chain in one hand. On the other end of the iron chain was a woman with disheveled hair. Li Mu looked carefully and recognized that she was Madame Chu. However, at this time, she was in a very sorry state. Her clothes were tattered and her hair was disheveled. Even her originally solid body was much more illusory. The iron chain passed through her shoulder blade, making it impossible for her to turn into a soul and break free. Commandant Shen looked at her indifferently and asked, "Speak, what is Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's plot to come to the North County?" Madame Chu stared at him fiercely and didn't say a word. A smile appeared on Commandant Shen's face and he said coldly, "You won't speak, right?" Li Mu walked out of the Yaman's courtyard and could still hear Madame Chu's miserable screams. He didn't expect that Commandant Shen, a gentle person, could be so cruel. Even Li Mu couldn't stand the way he forced Madame Chu to speak and could only temporarily avoid him. Constable Zhao followed him out and sighed. Commandant Shen's parents and wife were all killed by Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. His hatred for Chu Jiang of Gojoseon is unimaginable. When the screams in the courtyard stopped and Li Mu walked in again, Madame Chu's soul was extremely weak and was on the verge of dissipating. Commandant Shen glanced at Li Mu and said, "You haven't condensed your soul yet. Her soul power is useful to you. You can deal with it." Li Mu cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Commandant Shen." It seemed that he didn't get any useful information from Madame Chu. After all, Madame Chu wasn't in the soul realm and wouldn't be valued by Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. She was ranked 17th among Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals, only slightly stronger than the 18th ranked green-faced ghost. Commandant Shen untied a gourd from his waist, raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine. Then he left alone. Li Mu glanced at Madame Chu and didn't do anything. Even if he didn't do anything, this ghost soul would dissipate in 15 minutes. The reason why Li Mu didn't do anything was that Madame Chu's yin qi was extremely pure and clear. Obviously, she hadn't killed anyone before the Spring Wind Pavilion case. However, she still wanted to kill someone. Li Mu had the ability to save her, but he didn't plan to. Madame Chu was lying on the ground and her soul was on the verge of collapse. She suddenly laughed. Li Mu looked down at her and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Madame Chu's face showed a trace of sarcasm. She said, "I'm laughing at the ways of the world. Good people don't get good rewards while evil people sit firmly in the high court. You so-called government officials who make decisions for the people are just a group of people who bully the weak and fear the strong." Li Mu sneered and said, "You suck people's yang qi and want to kill them. What kind of good is that?" Madame Chu's soul had dissipated to the extreme. She didn't answer Li Mu and used the last of her strength to shout, "Cui Ming, you'll die a horrible death." She closed her eyes and her soul was about to dissipate. The next moment, a golden light entered her body and made her soul more solid. Li Mu looked down at her and asked, "Who did you just say?" Chapter 149. Li Mu was very familiar with the name Cui Ming. Su-hee's enemy was called this name. Although she did not tell Li Mu guessed that Cui Ming must have something to do with Su-hee's death 20 years ago. Madame Chu had already accepted her fate. She closed her eyes and said, "If you want to kill me, then kill me. Give me a quick death." Li Mu asked, "The Cui Ming you're talking about, is it Cui Ming, the magistrate of Yangqiu County 20 years ago?" Madame Chu's eyes suddenly opened. She said sternly, "You know him too. Who is he to you?" Li Mu said calmly, "Enemy." He looked at Madame Chu and asked, "You have a grudge against him too?" Madame Chu's face was full of hatred. She gritted her teeth and said, "A great grudge. I want to cut him into pieces and eat him alive." Li Mu stood up and said, "Tell me. If what you say is true, I can spare your life." Madame Chu struggled to sit up and said, "He used to be my fiancé. My family used all their power to help him condense his primordial spirit. That was how he became the magistrate of Yangqiu County. However, he killed me and threw away my body not long after he became the magistrate. He wiped out my entire family and married the daughter of the magistrate of Jiujiang." Su-hee's experience was very similar to Madame Chu's. According to Li Mu's guess, Su-hee's death might be because of Madame Chu, and Madame Chu's death was because of the daughter of the magistrate of Jiujiang. Cui Ming's actions were similar to Zhao Yong's, but worse than Zhao Yong's. Madame Chu laughed bitterly and said, I was fortunate to be able to survive in this world as a soul. During these past 20 years, I cultivated bitterly and didn't hesitate to join the ranks of King Chu Jiang, all for the sake of being able to take revenge one day. Unfortunately, I don't even know where he is before I die. He's in Zhong County. Leaning against the wall, Commandery Captain Shen took a sip of wine from the gourd and said, Chui Ming, the husband of the daughter of the county chief of Jiujiang Commandery. 12 years ago, he exposed the collusion of the county chief of Jiujiang Commandery with the demon sect and was promoted by the late emperor. Later, he met Princess Yunyang and became her husband. 3 years ago, he was promoted to assistant minister of the West Platform. Heh heh heh. Mrs. Chu chuckled pitifully. Back then, he used the excuse of colluding with heretical cultivation to wipe out the entire Chu clan. The Jiujiang county chief invited the wolf into the house, so this day should have come. Karma, karma. Li Mu felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. Chui Ming had been promoted by stepping on the corpses of his wife's family. How could such a disloyal and heartless person enter the center of power of the imperial court? It was no wonder that Madame Chu sighed with regret before her death. Li Mu looked at Commandant Shen and asked, Your Excellency, what should we do with her? Commandery Captain Shen said, I have already handed her over to you. You can decide whether to kill or keep her. Li Mu actually did not know how to deal with her. Madame Chu did not kill anyone and did not cause any serious consequences. According to the law, she did not deserve to be killed. However, she had bewitched the people and sucked their yang qi. He could not let her go just like that. Madame Chu looked at Bai, who was hanging from Li Mu's waist. Determination suddenly appeared in her eyes. She said, If Chui Ming doesn't die, I won't be able to rest in peace. I am willing to become the spirit of your sword and serve you. Spirit bodies and soul bodies could be attached to magic treasures to increase their power. Some high-level cultivators would capture the souls of powerful demons and ghosts, and forcibly refine them into magic treasures to increase their power. Li Mu had never thought of doing this before. After all, no one was willing to be refined into a magic treasure. If the sword existed, the spirit would exist. If the sword died, the spirit would die. Most magic treasure spirits were forced. Madame Chu was willing to become a sword spirit. She was not forced. If there was a spirit sword spirit in Bai, she would be able to control Bai herself. This would be much more flexible than Li Mu controlling the sword himself. It would be equivalent to having a middle realm helper when facing an enemy. Not only that, her greatest use was to lend her mana to Li Mu at critical moments. As long as he held Bai, his mana could reach the fourth realm in a short period of time. Even if Madame Chu's mana was not as good as Su He's, Li Mu could easily kill a fourth realm Abhijina. He could fight against a fifth realm Abhijina and a sixth realm Dongxian. Even if he could not win, he could at least protect himself. Li Mu could not resist such a temptation. He looked at Madame Chu and asked, Have you thought it through? Madame Chu's expression was resolute. She said, With my strength alone, I will never be able to take revenge in this lifetime. I only hope that one day, I can see that villain Chui Ming die under this sword with my own eyes. Bai had already been recognized as Li Mu's master. As a sword spirit, she would also become Li Mu's servant. Madame Chu's only obsession was to seek revenge on Chui Ming. As for Su He's revenge, Li Mu would definitely avenge her. Chui Ming was heartless and deserved to die. Whether it was for personal or public reasons, Li Mu could not let him go. He pulled Bai out and said, Come in yourself. Madame Chu's soul turned into a puff of smoke and merged into Bai. Li Mu used the sword to cut his fingertip and drew a rune on the sword with his blood. He formed a seal with one hand and released a stream of spiritual energy. The blood rune on the sword was instantly absorbed into the sword. After doing all this, Li Mu closed the scabbard and said, You stay inside first. I will help you heal later. Commandant Shen looked at him and said, In the case of Spring Wind Pavilion, you hid for half a month and saved countless lives. Your contribution is the greatest. You can choose 2 items from the Shen room. Let Constable Zhao take you there. Li Mu had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you, Commandant Shen. After a while, Constable Zhao took Li Mu to the second floor of the treasure pavilion. He sighed and said, "You've only been here for a month and you've already entered the treasure pavilion twice. Most of the constables here can't even enter once a year. However, I've never seen a constable as reckless as you. You've only just reached the soul condensation realm and you dare to fight a third-realm demonic ghost." When they reached the second floor, Constable Zhao said, "I won't introduce the items here to you. You can see for yourself. You have 15 minutes. Remember to choose what you want in 15 minutes. Li Mu wanted the soul-beating whip. When using this whip to fight enemies, 3 souls would leave the body with 1 strike and the second strike would dissipate the soul. Wan Wan's spiritual eyes could control souls, so it was perfect for her. He looked at Constable Zhao and said, "Can I choose the soul-beating whip?" Constable Zhao looked at him and said, "Why are you still thinking about the Yaman's items?" Li Mu smiled and said, "Among these items, I only want the soul-beating whip." He was afraid that if he didn't give it to him this time, he would keep thinking about it in the future. Constable Zhao finally said helplessly, "That's not for me to decide. I'll help you ask the county lieutenant." Constable Zhao left the treasure pavilion and quickly returned. He said, "The county lieutenant has agreed. You can take the soul-beating whip, but you can only choose the soul-beating whip. If you give up the soul-beating whip, you can choose 2 items. As for which one to choose, you can think about it yourself." Li Mu said without hesitation, "I choose the soul-beating whip." Constable Zhao took out the soul-beating whip from his sleeve and handed it to him. He said, "You're very lucky. 2 of the Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals were killed by you. That's why the county lieutenant made an exception for you. Continue to work hard. Perhaps in 2 years, you'll be on equal footing with me." Li Mu put away the soul-beating whip and said with a smile, "I just want to do something for the people. I've never thought about these things." Constable Zhao waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Li Mu looked around and said, "It's not worth it to exchange 2 for 1. Can I exchange a few more spiritual jades?" On the way home, Li Mu weighed the heavy spiritual jades in his sleeve and calculated his harvest this time. The Yaman had given him 30 taels of silver as a special fund. There were about a dozen taels left. Constable Zhao didn't ask, and Li Mu didn't mention it either. In addition to the silver, he had also obtained a soul-beating whip and 7 spiritual jades. Although they were of the lowest quality and couldn't be used by him and Lu Hanyan, they could be of great use to Wan Wan and Xiao Bai. In addition, his desire had been perfected. He could condense the 7th spirit at any time. His biggest gain was, of course, subduing a female ghost who was about to enter the spirit realm. This allowed his overall strength to improve by several levels. When he encountered high-level cultivators, he had enough strength to protect himself. After careful calculation, he realized that he had made a lot of money from this mission. When he returned home and walked into the courtyard, he saw Lu Hanyan sitting on a stone bench. She glanced at Li Mu and turned her head away. Obviously, she was still angry. Li Mu walked over and said with an apologetic smile, "I'm back." Lu Hanyan curled her lips and said, "Why are you back? Why don't you go to your Rongrong?" "She already said that she won't take your money," Li Mu said. "That's for the task. I definitely won't go to that kind of place in the future." Lu Hanyan turned her head and still ignored him. Li Mu knew that she was angry not because he went to the brothel, but because he chose the cold and arrogant Rongrong the first time he went there. This would definitely make her connect something else. At that time, he had just chosen casually and didn't think too much. If he explained this matter directly, it would probably make things worse. Li Mu thought for a moment and with a thought, he secretly pulled out Bai Yi's scabbard a little. A wisp of smoke floated out of Bai Yi and turned into a female ghost in red. She appeared beside Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan was sulking in her heart when she sensed something strange beside her. When she turned her head, she happened to meet a pale face. The woman in red had disheveled hair and a pale face. Her body was emitting a ghostly aura. Lu Hanyan pounced on Li Mu and hugged him tightly. She said in a trembling voice, There's a ghost." Li Mu held her slender waist with one hand and patted her shoulder with the other. He comforted her. "I'm here. Don't be afraid." Chapter 150. Li Mu hugged Lu Hanyan and comforted her. "Don't be afraid. She's the sword spirit I just accepted. Lu Hanyan finally realized something. She pushed Li Mu away and said angrily, "Are you doing this on purpose? I just want you to get to know each other. This is Mrs. Chu, Bai's sword spirit." Li Mu introduced her to Lu Hanyan, then looked at Mrs. Chu and said, "This is Lu Hanyan. You can call her Lady Lu." Mrs. Chu bowed to Lu Hanyan and said, "Greetings, mistress." Lu Hanyan said, "Who's your mistress?" Li Mu took her hand and said, "Not now, but sooner or later you will be." He took out a piece of spiritual jade from his sleeve and handed it to her, saying, "This is for you." Lu Hanyan's attention was temporarily diverted. She asked, "What is this?" Li Mu said, "It's a spiritual jade. It contains spiritual power and can be directly guided out for cultivation. Take it first. There are a few more pieces. I'll give them to Wan Wan and Xiao Bai." Li Mu put Mrs. Chu back into the sword and left with an excuse from Lu Hanyan. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and let out a long breath. Li Si was right. The devil was often hidden in the details. He still had a lot to learn from Li Si. If he had the chance to go to a brothel next time, he would definitely choose the sexy and beautiful first. He gave the soul-striking whip to Wan Wan. Seeing the cute girl holding the whip, Li Mu felt that something was wrong. It seemed that Lu Hanyan was more suitable. However, he thought that if he gave the soul-striking whip to Lu Hanyan, she would probably have more chances to whip him in the future. It was safer to give it to Wan Wan. After all, although Lu Hanyan had many advantages, she could never compare with Wan Wan in terms of being well-behaved, obedient, and not being jealous. Of the 7 spirit jades, 1 was given to Lu Hanyan to taste, 3 were given to Wan Wan, and 3 were given to Little White. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan both had physiques that could easily absorb spiritual energy, and they were also dual cultivating every night. In fact, there wasn't much of a difference whether they had spiritual jades or not. For Xiao Bai and Wan Wan, the spiritual energy contained in a spiritual jade was at least equivalent to a month of their cultivation. Wan Wan was more playful. Every day, she would think more about what to eat in the morning, what to eat in the afternoon, what to eat in the evening, and what to eat in the middle of the night when she was hungry. Xiao Bai was very hard-working in her cultivation. Every day after dinner, she would stay in Li Mu's room for a while until Lu Hanyan came over before leaving. For the rest of the time, she would cultivate in her small room. Her entire clan had died tragically at the hands of human cultivators. For a heavenly fox, this was a blood feud that she had to avenge. Li Mu had asked her who the cultivator who killed her clan was, but Xiao Bai couldn't say. Before the old fox died, she had only projected the appearance of the cultivator in her mind. After leaving Xiao Bai's room and walking past Lu Hanyan's room, Li Mu walked in and couldn't help but ask, "Why didn't you ask me more about Mrs. Chu?" With Lu Hanyan's personality, she would be jealous of anyone. She shouldn't be so calm. Lu Hanyan rolled her eyes at him and said, "I trust you." Li Mu was somewhat touched. Lu Hanyan still understood him. Although he admitted that sometimes he wanted all of them, he wouldn't be tempted by just any female ghost or female demon. Whether it was in terms of appearance or strength, Mrs. Chu was far inferior to Suhi. Suhi's cultivation was profound. She looked only 2 or 3 years older than Lu Hanyan. Mrs. Chu was old enough to be Lu Hanyan's mother. He returned to his room, pulled out the bai scabbard, and let Mrs. Chu out again. Her foundation had been damaged by Commandery Officer Shen, and her soul had almost dissipated. Although Li Mu had protected her at the critical moment, he had only prevented her from dissipating. Her soul was still very weak. Li Mu recited the Heart Sutra, and a ball of golden light enveloped Mrs. Chu. After 15 minutes, the golden light dissipated. When she reappeared, her body was still very condensed. When Li Mu healed the white snake, the mana in his body was still very weak. The current him was no longer the same as before. He could better display the effects of the Heart Sutra. Mrs. Chu's injuries were all healed. Li Mu took out a jade stone and said, "This is some soul power I collected. Refine it as soon as possible and advance to the soul realm." Li Mu had originally planned to use the soul force to condense his own soul, but right now, pushing Madame Chu's cultivation to the middle 3 stages was much more meaningful than condensing his own soul. After careful consideration, Li Mu decided to give this opportunity to her. Mrs. Chu bowed and said, "Thank you, Master." She absorbed all the soul power in the jade stone and sent it into the sword again. Li Mu inserted the scabbard, put Bai aside, and began to refine the desire in his body. Late at night, just after midnight, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. A yellow light appeared on the surface of his body, and then it completely disappeared into his body. Li Mu let out a long sigh of relief. After more than half a year, he had already condensed 6 of the 7 souls that he had lost. He only lacked the 5th soul, non-poison. Out of the 7 emotions, joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, disgust, and lust, Li Mu had already fulfilled all 6 of them except for love. So far, Li Mu had not even seen it from Lu Hanyan. This way, if his 7 souls were to be perfected, he could only hope to obtain great love. This kind of great love required the people to love and respect from the bottom of their hearts. Li Mu was a small official, not a parent official. It was even more difficult for him to obtain such great love. However, there was only 1 soul left in the 7 souls. Whether it was condensed or not, it didn't matter much. Mortals could still survive after losing 1 soul. He was a cultivator. The impact of losing 1 soul on his body was minimal. However, Li Mu still yearned for the 7 souls to be complete. Lu Hanyan didn't come over at night. Li Mu was too lazy to cultivate alone. He planned to completely relax and sleep. At this moment, he felt a strong call from Bai's sword. Bai's sword had long been refined by Li Mu and was connected to his mind. Li Mu quickly realized that it was Mrs. Chu, who had turned into a sword spirit, calling him. Li Mu stretched out his hand and Bai's sword flew into his hand. He took out the scabbard. After a burst of fog, Mrs. Chu's figure appeared again. At this moment, there was no longer any ghost chi or resentment on her body. Standing in front of Li Mu, she looked like an ordinary weak woman. Other than Mrs. Chu, the only female ghost that could give Li Mu such a feeling was Su He. This meant that she had officially stepped into the soul realm and become a ghost cultivator in the middle realm. However, Mrs. Chu had just stepped into the middle realm. When Li Mu first met Su He, she had already been in the 4th realm for a long time. She was much stronger than the current Mrs. Chu. Li Mu looked at her and said, "Congratulations on successfully entering the soul realm." Mrs. Chu said gratefully, "If it weren't for Master, my soul would have dissipated long ago." A 4th realm ghost cultivator was already considered an expert. It was rare to see one. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had more than 10 of them under his command. If the county government hadn't noticed, Mrs. Chu would have become his 17th soul realm ghost general. Li Mu asked, "Does Chu Jiang of Gojoseon really have any ulterior motives in the North County all these years?" Mrs. Chu shook her head and said, "I don't know. I only know that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon has been searching for and nurturing soul realm ghost cultivators. Many of his ghost generals used to be wandering ghosts. After they were taken in by him, if they couldn't advance to the soul realm within the time he set, they would have to sacrifice their soul power to other ghost generals. A peak 5th realm Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and more than 10 4th realm ghost generals could already be considered an extremely huge force. If it weren't for the ancestral court of Fu Lu School, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's power would only be higher than the North County's officials. Although the ancestral court of Fu Lu School was powerful, other than sending low-level disciples to cultivate in the secular world, it wouldn't interfere too much in the secular world. Unless it was a giant of the demonic path like Master Chen Huan, who exceeded the North County's ability to deal with, it would attract the super experts of the Fu Lu School. A small character like Chu Jiang of Gojoseon couldn't attract the attention of the experts of the ancestral court. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, who kept causing trouble in the North County, was the biggest threat to the North County. There should be many opportunities to deal with him in the future. Although the current Li Mu was still not a match for Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, he wasn't afraid of him. He looked at Madame Chu and said, "Enter the sword and try to transmit your spiritual power to me through Bai." After a moment, feeling the surging spiritual power in his body that was about to overflow, Li Mu's heart was filled with pride. Although Madame Chu's strength was far from Su He's, she was still at the 4th realm. She had already recognized Li Mu as her master and was willing to become Bai's sword spirit. With the connection between the two, Li Mu could borrow her spiritual power without being possessed. As long as Bai was in his hands, He could enter the fourth realm at any time and use all kinds of Dao techniques to display the strength of the fifth realm. Of course, other people's power was ultimately other people's. He couldn't slack off on his own cultivation. When he reached the middle realm with his own strength, he would truly have the capital to establish himself in this world where demonic ghosts ran rampant and countless experts. Chapter 151. Li Mu thought that his cultivation speed was already fast enough, but when he saw Li Si again, he found that his 7 souls had all been refined. There was no difficulty in refining the soul and condensing the soul. As long as one had enough courage and soul power, it was not difficult to cross 2 realms in half a month. However, this required a large amount of resources. For an ordinary person without any background to collect these resources, it was much more difficult than cultivating step by step. However, Li Mu did not envy him. While Li Si's cultivation was rapidly increasing, the weight on his body was not light. There was no free lunch in the world. If one wanted to gain something, they had to lose something else. He gained money, power and women, but lost his freedom. However, Li Si did not seem to care about this. Li Mu often saw him and Chen Miao Miao appearing together. The smile on his face was much more than before, as if he was a different person. It seemed that he had really found his love. Speaking of love, Li Mu was a little confused. Of the 7 emotions, the only one he lacked was love. However, he had never felt this kind of feeling from anyone until now. Even Lu Hanyan was no exception. Li Mu even suspected that she did not actually like him, but simply lusted after his body. He could not figure out this question and planned to ask Li Si. What is love? Li Si leaned back in his chair and shook his head at Li Mu. This question is very profound and there is more than one answer. You need to discover it yourself. Li Mu asked, is it not love when 2 people who like each other are together? Li Si patted his shoulder and said meaningfully, like is like, love is love. Like is possession. Love is giving. Like is unbridled and willful. Love is restraint and tolerance. After you and Lady Lu get married and spend a few years together, you will naturally understand. Li Mu understood Li Si's meaning. At first sight, there is liking, but after a long time, there will be love. If Lu Hanyan wasn't so beautiful, didn't have such a great figure, wasn't the shopkeeper of the Yunyan Pavilion, didn't have a purine body, and wasn't so multi-talented, Li Mu would still like her. Then it would be true love. Right now, the relationship between the 2 of them was merely liking each other. Love would only develop after a long period of time. Love wasn't something that could be created overnight. He still needed to cultivate feelings with her. With nothing to do in the Yamen, Li Mu used the excuse of patrolling to go to Yunyan Pavilion. There were only 2 branches of the Yunyan Pavilion in the county city. One was a bookstore, and the other was a tea house where storytelling was the main business. With the help of the Su family, the 2 branches opened smoothly without any obstacles. Although business was temporarily slow, the bookstore would soon become popular with a few best-selling books such as Strange Stories from a Strange Story and Confucius Does Not Speak in Yangqiu County. On the other hand, business in the tea house was very average. Without good stories and a storyteller with great storytelling skills, very few people would specially come here to drink tea. Li Mu went to the bookstore first. Zhang Shan told him that Lu Hanyan was in the tea house. Li Mu walked into the tea house and saw that there were only a few guests sitting in the tea house. The storyteller on the stage wasn't in a very good mood. Lu Hanyan sat in a corner, frowning in deep thought. Li Mu walked over and sat beside her. Lu Hanyan instinctively moved to the side. When she turned her head and saw that it was Li Mu, she moved her butt back. The tea house was very quiet. She asked in a small voice, "Why are you here?" Li Mu held her hand and said, "I missed you." Lu Hanyan's face was glowing. She allowed Li Mu to hold her hand. She looked at the storyteller on the stage and said, "Business in the prefecture capital is really difficult. The tea house is losing money every day. Very few of the guests who came to the tea house actually came to drink tea. Most of them came to listen to some novel stories to pass the time." Before the Yunyan Pavilion moved in, the market of the tea houses in the prefecture capital had already been divided up by a few families. It was not easy to snatch a fixed source of customers from them. Li Mu smiled and said, at the crucial moment, you still have to rely on me, right? In Yangqiu County, if it weren't for Li Mu, the Yunyan Pavilion wouldn't have been so popular. The guests in the tea house were also exchanged for by Li Mu using one unusual story after another, one exciting chapter after another, risking his life. Others thought that he had hooked up with Lu Hanyan, but few people knew that he was the man behind Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan gently pinched his waist and said, "You're still making sarcastic remarks. Hurry up and think of a solution. If this goes on, the tea house will close. When that time comes, I won't be able to support you." In the tea house, the few guests were somewhat dispirited. In this newly opened tea house, the taste of the tea was acceptable, but the storyteller's story was dull. Two people finished their tea and directly left. When the others were about to finish their tea and leave, they saw the storyteller on the stage walk down. A waiter carried a screen onto the stage. Not long after, a young voice began to speak from behind the screen. "A water ghost, a young man, an old man who grows grapes. Seems a little interesting." The young man's story was quite interesting. A guest had already stood up and was about to leave. After standing and listening for a while, he sat down again and poured a pot of tea. When Li Mu was in Yangqiu County, he had already figured out that those who liked to listen to stories, songs and operas had their own cliques. Good wine fears no dark alley. As long as there were good stories, songs and operas that were approved by a few guests, the Yunyan Pavilion's reputation would be spread by word of mouth in a few days. It only took 5 days for the tea house branches in the county city to fill up more than half of the seats during the peak period from the number of guests that could be counted with one hand. On this day, the tea house was even more crowded. Because the storyteller had told a story in the past 2 days, and it had reached the most exciting part. After everyone was seated, the young storyteller behind the screen began slowly. Last time, Zhang Luer failed to get Granny Kai to betroth Daoist to him, so he put poison in the soup and intended to kill Granny Kai. As a result, her father was poisoned to death by mistake. Instead, Zhang Luer falsely accused Daoist. That muddle-headed county magistrate accepted Zhang Luer's bribe and turned the case into an unjust one. He intended to execute Daoist. This play, Daoist's Injustice, tugged at the heartstrings of many guests. As people at the bottom of society, they could empathize with Daoist's experience. They also urgently hoped that someone could uphold justice for her and punish evil. Those who do good suffer poverty and have a shorter life, while those who do evil enjoy wealth and have a longer life. Heaven and earth, you are afraid of the strong and bully the weak, but it turns out that you are pushing the boat with the current. Heaven and earth, you can't tell good from bad. Heaven and earth, you are wrong to judge the virtuous and foolish. Before Daoist died, she made 3 vows: blood staining the white cloth, heavy snow falling from the sky, and drought for 3 years. Her cry of grief and indignation moved heaven. Suddenly, the sky above the execution ground was covered with dark clouds, and the sky darkened. The scorching sun in June disappeared, and snowflakes fell from the sky. Frightened, the county magistrate ordered the executioners to carry out the execution immediately. Wherever the saber passed, the head fell to the ground. Daoist's hot blood sprayed directly onto the white cloth hanging high in the air, and not a single drop fell to the ground. For the next 3 years, there was no rain in Shanyang. When Li Mu walked out from the backstage, the guests sitting below the stage were still sitting there in a daze. None of them left. This time, he did not suddenly stop at the most exciting part of the story. The spirit of the concealed arrow had been condensed, and the anger of these people did not have as much effect on him as before. Li Mu stood at the entrance of the tea house, and did not go out because it was raining outside. When he was telling the story on the stage, there was a sudden burst of thunder outside, and it started to rain heavily. At this moment, the rain was much lighter. Under the eaves of the shops on the street, there were pedestrians taking shelter from the rain. There were also passers-by who did not have time to escape, and were completely drenched, cursing as they walked on the street. In the corner of the roof of the tea house, there were 2 figures curled up. One was a skinny old man, and the other was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Both of them were dressed in rags, and the girl was holding a broken bowl in her hand. They should be beggars who were temporarily taking shelter from the rain. It seemed that they disliked them for being too dirty, and the passers-by who were taking shelter from the rain were not willing to get too close to them. Li Mu took out a piece of broken silver and put it in the bowl. The two hurriedly thanked him. 2 days ago, the weather had turned cold, and the two were drenched in the rain. Li Mu saw them curled up in the corner, shivering. He walked in again, took a pot of hot tea and 2 bowls, and handed them to them. He said, "Drink a cup of tea to warm up. It's free." The girl was stunned. She had been hiding outside and eavesdropping, and the kind man in front of her had the same voice as the storyteller. She quickly reacted and knelt down to kowtow to him. She said, "Thank you, benefactor. Thank you, benefactor." Li Mu waved his hand, held up the umbrella, and walked to the county government. Several patrolling constables walked into the government office awkwardly, and muttered, "Why did it rain so suddenly?" There was no sign at all. Outside the county city, several women who were washing clothes by the stream were suddenly drenched by the heavy rain. Their clothes became translucent, faintly revealing their bloated figures. A shabby Daoist priest in rags was among them. He was talking and laughing with them, and his eyes were looking around. The women did not avoid him. From time to time, they would pull their clothes and tease him. The old Daoist priest looked at it for a while and felt bored. It was still raining. He looked up at the gloomy sky, counted with his fingers and said in surprise, "My dear mother, this rain is not right." Chapter 152. It shouldn't be raining today. This rain actually contains the power of heaven and earth. Who caused it? Damn it, this North County is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Looks like I'll have to stay here for a few more days to observe. Lao Dao pinched the sky and muttered to himself. A woman said, "Old pervert, what are you muttering about?" Lao Dao collected his thoughts and smiled. "Are you going to buy the talisman I mentioned just now? It's very effective. Everyone who's used it says it's good." Li Mu walked into the county office. Not long after, Constable Zhao came to the office. "There's something wrong with this rain." He wiped the rainwater off his face and said, "The county governor said that it shouldn't be raining these few days. Something must have happened." Li Mu asked suspiciously, "What kind of matter can affect the heavens and rain?" Constable Zhao said, "There are many. Cultivators who condense their spirits can summon the wind and fog. Cultivators who condense their spirits can even pray for the sun and rain. Every time a new Dao technique or abhijna is born, there will be a heavenly vision." Li Mu was shocked. Only then did he realize a problem. The heaven and earth of this world was not the sky and earth that he saw. A cultivator's Dao oath was made to heaven and earth. If they violated it, they would be punished by heaven. In other words, heaven was watching what people did. Just now, he used Daoist's story to scold the heaven and earth for bullying the weak and fearing the strong. It couldn't be that this rain was because of this, right? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. It seemed that the time when the rain was the heaviest was when he talked about Daoist's vow. Li Mu immediately made up his mind. That line had to be changed. It was enough to scold the corrupt officials. It was best not to involve heaven and earth in everything. If heaven was unhappy with him and struck down lightning, it would be too late for him to regret. Fortunately, the rain didn't last long. Within a quarter of an hour after Li Mu returned to the county yamen, the sky cleared up again. The sky was blue and there wasn't even a cloud in sight. If it weren't for the wet puddles on the ground, no one would have thought that it had just rained. When Constable Zhao left the watchroom, he instructed Li Mu, "You stay here and don't leave the yamen. In a while, everyone will follow the county governor to pay respects to the national temple." Every county in the Great Zhou dynasty had a state temple. Li Mu had been to Yangqiu County once, but the state temple in Yangqiu County could not be compared to the one in the county capital. This was a large hall that occupied a large area. Although it only had 1 floor, it was at least 30 feet tall. The first thing that came into sight when they walked into the national temple were 3 towering statues. The moment they stepped into the national temple, they would have the urge to kneel down and worship them. There were hundreds of prayer mats in the hall, and the people of the North County were kneeling on them. The people lined up and walked in from the entrance. After paying their respects, they walked out from the exit. Li Mu noticed that almost 90% of the people would produce a bit of psychokinesis in their bodies when they paid their respects to the 3 statues. The psychokinesis would be absorbed by the 3 statues. The national temple was similar to temples and Taoist temples. As long as people paid their respects sincerely, psychokinesis would be produced. Those who didn't produce psychokinesis would definitely be dissatisfied with the imperial court or the local government. This was unavoidable. Even the national temple couldn't force the people to worship it. To a certain extent, the proportion of people who produced psychokinesis represented the people's sentiment in the imperial court. When the people of an area paid their respects to the national temple, the proportion of people who produced psychokinesis was an important indicator to assess the achievements of the local officials. If the law and order of a place was good and the people lived and worked in peace, they would naturally have confidence in the imperial court. However, if the local officials were merciless and treated the people badly, causing them to complain and living in poverty, they wouldn't produce much psychokinesis. The people of the county government paid their respects to the national temple firstly to pay their respects and secondly to observe the people's sentiment. From the situation at the scene, only a small number of people didn't produce psychokinesis. This also meant that the people trusted the North County government very much. Li Mu looked at the 3 statues in the hall and asked, "Who are these 3 people?" Constable Zhao looked at him and asked, "Have you never been here before?" Li Mu shook his head. "No." Constable Zhao said in surprise, "Even if you haven't been here before, you should have seen the portraits of Emperor Taizu, Wu Zong, and Emperor Wen, right?" After Constable Zhao's reminder, Li Mu finally found information about the 3 statues in his mind. Emperor Taizu was the founding emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty. He conquered the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty and divided it into 36 counties. During Emperor Wu Zong's reign, he used iron and blood to sweep away the turmoil in the country and intimidate the neighboring countries so that they didn't dare to invade. After Wu Zong's reign, the power of the Great Zhou dynasty grew rapidly and deterred everyone. The last Emperor Wen, who ruled for 50 years, worked hard to govern the country. He purged the imperial court, and the people of the 36 counties of the Great Zhou dynasty were at peace. His famous rule of Emperor Wen had been influential to this day. These 3 were all emperors with outstanding contributions in the history of the Great Zhou dynasty. They were qualified to have their statues erected in the national temple and receive the worship of the people of the Great Zhou dynasty. A constable looked at the statues of the 3 emperors and couldn't help but feel admiration. Then a trace of unwillingness appeared on his face and he said in a low voice, "Emperor Taizu, Wu Zong, Emperor Wen, what kind of heroes are they? The Shao dynasty has lasted for hundreds of years, but in the end, it was stolen by a woman with a different surname." "Shut up." Constable Zhao slapped him hard on the head and said, "You dare to say anything? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you." Li Mu raised his head and looked at the statues of the 3 emperors. He didn't feel anything special in his heart. The current empress was the first empress since the establishment of the Great Zhou dynasty. In the hearts of the people of the Great Zhou dynasty, this was tantamount to going against the moral principles. It was still unacceptable to them. However, to Li Mu, it was not unprecedented for a woman to be an empress. It was also not something that was unacceptable. He followed the prefectural governor and paid his respects to the statues of the 3 emperors in a not-so-sincere manner. After returning to the yamen, he learned about the new task from Constable Zhao. In the process of paying their respects to the national temple, the people in a certain area did not have any psychokinesis. After investigating, the yamen found that these people were all from Yang County. They learned from these people that a plague had broken out in a few villages in Yang County. However, the Yang County government did nothing and allowed the plague to spread, causing the people of Yang County to panic. Yang County and Yu County happened to be the 2 counties that Constable Zhao was in charge of. Early the next morning, he would bring a few people to Yang County to investigate the situation. Li Mu would also go with them. Although Yang County was not far from the prefectural capital, considering that it would take time to complete the task, they might not be able to make it back by tomorrow night. During dinner, Li Mu told Yu Hanyun about the business trip tomorrow. After dinner, she helped Li Mu pack a small bag and said, "I don't know how long it will take for you to come back. I've packed 2 sets of clothes for you to change into. When the time comes, just bring back the dirty clothes you changed into. Be careful outside." Li Mu was not worried about his own safety at all. With Bai Yi in hand, unless King Chuzhong personally came, normal demonic ghosts and heretical cultivation would not pose much of a threat to him. However, he was still worried about them. Although he had already taught Yu Hanyan the thunder technique and weapon manipulation, she lacked experience in fighting enemies. If she encountered danger, she might not be able to use her full strength. However, nothing should happen in the prefectural capital. Li Mu had already instructed Li Si to keep an eye on them. He also told Little White to stay in her room and not run around. She was now at the crucial moment of her transformation. The demonic qi in her body was chaotic. Li Mu had pasted aura concealment talismans outside her room. Every night, he would use Buddhist mana to help her tidy up her body so that her demonic qi could be suppressed. Because of this, he had not dual cultivated with Yu Hanyan for a few days. In the morning, Li Mu opened his eyes and sat up in bed. Yesterday, he had helped Little White suppress her demonic qi until late at night. His mana was almost exhausted. He did not cultivate but went straight to bed with his clothes on. Li Mu was about to get out of bed when his right hand accidentally touched a smooth body. Li Mu's first thought was that Yu Hanyan had done something to him while he was asleep last night. However, when he looked down, he realized that his clothes were still intact. It was exactly the same as before he went to bed last night. He slowly turned his head and saw an unfamiliar girl lying on his bed without a stitch of clothing. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. She had a head of black hair and a beautiful face. Even with her eyes closed, her entire body was filled with charm. Li Mu sat on the bed and his mind went blank. Why aren't you up yet? Don't you still have to go to Yang County? Yu Hanyan walked to the door and opened it with her mana. When she saw the scene on the bed, she was stunned. Chapter 153. Li Mu looked at the unfamiliar girl on the bed and then looked at Lu Hanyan, who was standing at the door with tears in her eyes. His lips moved as he wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. He had been caught red-handed in bed. What else could he explain? Although even Li Mu himself didn't know why this young girl would appear on his bed, he didn't know. Lu Hanyan didn't say anything. She wiped her tears and turned to run away. Chasing after his future wife was more important. Li Mu didn't care about what was going on with the girl on the bed. He quickly chased after her without even wearing shoes. As soon as Lu Hanyan ran into the yard, Li Mu caught up with her and hugged her from behind. Li Mu hugged her tightly and hurriedly said, "Don't be angry. Let me explain." Lu Hanyan didn't struggle. 2 streams of tears flowed down her cheeks. She choked and said, "I saw it with my own eyes. What else do you have to explain? Isn't it enough for you to do whatever you want outside? You actually brought her home," Li Mu said with a wry smile. I don't know who she is. I saw her when I opened my eyes this morning. Do you believe what you're saying?" Li Mu didn't know how to explain. Suddenly, a vague voice came from behind him. The girl walked out of the room naked and barefoot. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Li Mu and Lu Hanyan. She asked in confusion, "Benefactor Sister Lu, what are you doing?" Hearing this extremely familiar voice, Li Mu turned around and was stunned. He said in surprise, "Xiao Bai." The next moment, his vision went black. Lu Hanyan had covered his eyes from behind. Lu Hanyan's face turned red. She said angrily, "Xiao Bai, quickly go into the room." The girl looked at her and asked in confusion, "Why?" Lu Hanyan said with a red face, "Look down." The girl lowered her head to take a look. After a brief moment of shock, she let out a cry of surprise and her figure instantly disappeared on the spot. A moment later, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan stood in the room, looking at the girl who had wrapped herself in a blanket. They murmured, How did you transform?" I don't know either." The girl's face was bright red as she said, last night, I just wanted to give it a try and then fell asleep. When I woke up, I became like this." Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan and said, "Do you believe me this time?" Lu Hanyan was a little ashamed and said, "I'll help her find some clothes." After Xiao Bai transformed, although she wasn't as tall as Li Qing, she was still half a head taller than Wan Wan. Wan Wan's clothes didn't fit her, so she could only make do with Lu Hanyan's clothes. In Lu Hanyan's room, she stood behind Xiao Bai, helping her comb her hair while looking at the girl's face in the bronze mirror. Even though she was very confident in her appearance, when she saw the girl in front of her, she couldn't help but feel ashamed. The girl in front of her was really the most beautiful girl she had ever seen. Even as a girl, when she saw her naked body, her heart couldn't help but beat faster. Lil. Her lips moved. She suddenly realized that when she was a little fox in the past, she didn't feel anything when he called her Lil White. But now, when he called her Lil White again, he felt a little weird. She secretly looked at her again and asked, Xiao Bai, what's your name? We can't keep calling you Xiao Bai in the future, right? The girl smiled and said, My surname is Su. Big sister Lu can just call me Xiao Bai in the future. Lu Hanyan helped her comb her hair and couldn't help but say, Xiao Bai is really beautiful. Xiao Bai said shyly, Big sister Lu is the beautiful one. Li Mu stood at the door and said, You guys stay at home. I'm leaving. Even though Xiao Bai's transformation was a happy event, Li Mu was going to Yang County today. He couldn't let Constable Zhao and the others wait for him. Lu Hanyan put down the comb and said, Xiao Bai, sit for a while and stay at home. I'll send him out. Xiao Bai nodded obediently. Li Mu walked into the courtyard and said, It's only a few steps from here to the yamen. You don't have to send me off. Lu Hanyan walked over and helped him tidy up his collar. She asked, Xiao Bai has transformed. Are you very happy? Li Mu said with lingering fear, What's there to be happy about? I was almost scared to death by her and also by you. Lu Hanyan said bitterly. She was born so beautiful and wholeheartedly wanted to repay your kindness by giving herself to you. Li Mu glanced at her and said, Aren't you beautiful? Have some confidence in yourself. Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, I know I'm not as beautiful as Xiao Bai. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Li Mu stretched out his arms and pulled her into his embrace. He said, In my eyes, you're the most beautiful. No matter who you compare yourself to, you're always the most beautiful. Don't ever doubt this. Lu Hanyan made a soft sound of acknowledgement. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him gently on the cheek. She said, Come back soon. We'll wait for you at home. Li Mu returned her kiss before leaving the house and hurrying towards the yamen. Xiao Bai's sudden transformation had caught him off guard and almost caused Lu Hanyan to misunderstand. Fortunately, it was more daunting than dangerous and he managed to get through it safely. The only pity was that after Xiao Bai transformed, he couldn't always hold her in his arms and play with her like a cat. Not long after Li Mu left, Wan Wan came running in with a lunchbox in her hand. The lunchbox contained the breakfast she had bought. When she saw the unfamiliar girl in the courtyard, she was stunned and asked in confusion, Miss, who are you looking for? Li Mu arrived late at the yamen's entrance. When he saw Constable Zhao and the others standing at the yamen's entrance, he hurriedly said, Sorry, I was delayed by some matters. The constables behind Constable Zhao looked at Li Mu with envy. Constable Zhao pointed at Li Mu's face and shook his head. He said, I really envy you young people. Li Mu realized something and reached out to wipe the lipstick mark on his face. He said awkwardly, It's getting late. Let's get going. Other than Li Mu, Constable Zhao had brought 4 other people with him to Yang County. One of them was the determined young man named Lin Yu, who had passed the 3 tests with Li Mu and Li Si that day. The other 3 were old men from the yamen. With the speed of a spirit-condensing realm cultivator using a spirit-traveling talisman, it would take more than 4 hours to travel from Yang County to the county capital. Everyone had to rest along the way. By the time they reached Yang County, it was already past noon. After reaching Yang County, they didn't go to the yamen. Instead, they went directly to the village where the plague had spread. Cultivators who had refined the 7 spirits were immune to all diseases and evils. Although it was an exaggeration, they were immune to more than 99% of the diseases of mortals. The 6 of them arrived at the village entrance and knocked on a villager's door. Just as they were about to ask about the situation in the villager suddenly fell to the ground unconscious. One of the constables touched his forehead and exclaimed, It's so hot. Constable Zhao said, Help him in first. The 2 of them helped the villager into the house. Constable Zhao asked the villager's wife to get a bowl of water and turned a piece of fulu into talisman water. He pinched the villager's mouth and poured the talisman water into his stomach. The villager's complexion improved after the talisman water entered his stomach, but he still didn't wake up. Constable Zhao frowned and said, How can it be useless? Li Mu walked forward and said, Let me try. Although Fulu often had mysterious powers, it wasn't omnipotent. Disease-dispelling talismans could cure common diseases such as headaches and fever, colds and diarrhea. However, there were many diseases that couldn't be cured. His hand glowed with a golden light. Under the astonished gazes of Constable Zhao and the others, the golden light was transferred into the villager's body. The villager's pale face gradually turned rosy, and his breathing calmed down. One of the constables touched his forehead again and exclaimed, "It's not hot anymore." Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief. Although the Heart Sutra couldn't directly increase his strength, it was very useful in treating illnesses and saving people. Constable Zhao looked at the villager and muttered, "What kind of plague is it that even the disease-dispelling talisman doesn't work?" The young man named Lin Yu suddenly stretched out his hand and looked at the villager's eyelids and tongue. Finally, he leaned on the villager's chest and listened. His expression gradually became serious and he said, "It's the plague." Chapter 154. Plague. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Constable Zhao's heart skipped a beat. His face immediately darkened. "Are you sure?" Li Mu could clearly feel Constable Zhao's nervousness and knew why he was so nervous. Cultivators had created all kinds of supernatural powers and Fulu pills that could cure hundreds of diseases and save thousands of lives. However, they were not omnipotent. Although the cultivators themselves would not contract certain human diseases such as the plague, they were powerless when they encountered them. They could only watch as the patient's illnesses worsened and they died. In the past, the imperial court's method of dealing with the plague was to completely seal off the infected areas. Once all the infected people died, the plague would naturally stop spreading. Lin Yu nodded solemnly and said, "I'm sure it's the plague. I used to practice medicine with my master and encountered it before." Constable Zhao hurriedly asked, "Is there a way to save it?" Lin Yu shook his head and said, "Fulu is useless for this disease. Whether the infected can survive depends on God's will. Unless you encounter a medical expert or use a heaven-grade Fulu to help them reconstruct their bodies." Li Mu did not expect the plague to be so troublesome. The heaven-grade Fulu had the power of creation. When Wu Bo's heart was crushed by senior brother Qin, he could also regenerate his body. Naturally, it was not a problem for him to treat and save people. The problem was that it was unrealistic to have a heaven-grade Fulu for each of the infected people in Yang County. It was impossible to even get one, let alone one. Since the rise of Buddhism, schools of cultivation such as medicine, painting, and music gradually declined. Now, even preserving their orthodoxy was a problem. It was not easy to encounter a plague. Constable Zhao looked at Li Mu and asked nervously, "Can you save them?" Li Mu had full confidence in the Buddhist light of the Heart Sutra. He said, "I'll try my best. The plan now is to isolate the villages where the epidemic happened as soon as possible. No one is allowed to enter or leave. Then, gather the sick people together and try to prevent more people from being infected." Lin Yu nodded repeatedly and said, "Big Brother Li, you're right. Apart from that, we must exterminate the rats as soon as possible to prevent the plague from spreading further." Constable Zhao first ordered a bailiff to return to the county yamen to report the situation. Then, he asked someone to find the village chief and block the roads at the entrance and end of the village, forbidding anyone from entering or leaving. Then, he began to investigate the epidemic situation in the village. The other two constables took on the responsibility of exterminating the rats. Lin Yu asked them to dig a big pit in the village. Then they filled the pit with water and poured an unknown powder into it. After the powder was mixed in, it emitted a faint fragrance. Soon, the crowd heard the sound of footsteps. Gray or black rats appeared from all corners of the village and jumped into the puddles one after another. After jumping into the puddle, they did not struggle and floated quietly on the surface of the water. After a while, the puddle was full of floating rats, and there were no more rats around. One of the bailiffs threw out a Fulu, and the puddle was set ablaze. All the rat corpses were incinerated. In order to completely eradicate the plague, they had to cut off the source of the plague. After a few people investigated, they found that the infection in the village was not serious. Only 10 villagers were infected. Constable Zhao gathered the 10 people together. Lin Yu went out once and found some herbs. He boiled them into a pot and distributed the decoction to the villagers who were not infected. Li Mu did not stay idle either. After the 10 people were cleansed by his light of Buddha, their symptoms gradually disappeared. Li Mu obtained a lot of merit from them, but he also used up a lot of his mana. This made him envious of Buddhism, Taoism, and the imperial family. If he wanted to obtain merit or psychokinesis, he had to do it himself. He used up his mana to treat the sick and heal the wounded. They only had to build a Taoist palace, a temple, a national temple, and erect a few statues or stone tablets to obtain the psychokinesis and merit from the people. In the Great Zhou, only Buddhism, Taoism, and the imperial court had such special privileges. If other people or forces dared to build temples privately, accept the worship of the people, and absorb the merit and psychokinesis, they would be destroyed as heretical cultivation. Therefore, he could only envy them in his heart. After treating these people, Li Mu sat on the side to rest. Perhaps they had discovered it early, but no one in this village had died of the disease. In order not to delay, they had to go to the next village in 15 minutes. Lin Yu took advantage of the free time to come over and asked, "Brother Li, are you a dual cultivator of Buddhism and Taoism?" Li Mu also just found out that this young man was a descendant of the School of Medicine. He nodded at him and did not deny it. Lin Yu chatted with Li Mu for a while, mainly out of curiosity about his light of Buddha. After asking Li Mu a few questions, he stopped talking and sat quietly in the corner. He took out a cloth bag from his sleeve. When he opened the cloth bag, Li Mu saw that there were dozens of silver needles of different lengths and thicknesses in the bag. Lin Yu took out a silver needle and inserted his mana into it. He then inserted the needle into an acupuncture point on his wrist. Soon, he had inserted more than 10 silver needles into his body. There were all kinds of cultivation methods in this world, not just Buddhism and Taoism. It was normal for there to be some that he had not seen before. After arranging everything in this village, they did not delay and immediately rushed to the next village. When they arrived at the entrance of the village, they saw the villagers in a confrontation with more than 10 constables. The constables all used black cloth to cover their noses and mouths. They held weapons in their hands and pointed at the villagers from afar. They shouted, "Your village has been infected with the plague. We are under the orders of the county magistrate to seal this village. No one is allowed to enter or leave." A group of people gathered at the entrance of the village, their faces filled with grief and anger. The leader of the group, an old man, said in a trembling voice, "There are dozens of families in the village. You don't care about the sick and only sealed the village. You are forcing the villagers to die." The constable said loudly, "The county magistrate said that sacrificing your village in exchange for the safety of the entire county is worth it. Do you want to implicate the county, or even the entire North County?" "Bastard!" Constable Zhao sent the constable flying with a kick. He said angrily, "Is this how you treat the people?" The constable got up from the ground and said angrily, "Who are you? How dare you interfere with our work? Are you blind?" Behind Constable Zhao, an old constable from the county government kicked him to the ground again and said, "Get lost. You have no right to speak here. Go and call your lord here." The constable was about to curse again, but when he saw their clothes, he quickly swallowed the curse words that were about to come out of his mouth. The lord could afford to offend the people from the county government, but he, a lowly constable, could not. After getting up from the ground, he hurriedly led the group away. Constable Zhao walked to the entrance of the village and said to the old man, "We are constables from the county government. We are here specifically for this plague. Old man, how is the situation in the village?" Hearing that the county government had arrived, the villagers hurriedly welcomed them into the village. When they were in the previous village, they had already discussed a series of procedures to control the epidemic. First of all, in order to prevent the epidemic from spreading, the village had to be sealed. However, the infected people could not be ignored. They had to be quarantined and treated those who were already infected. They also had to prevent new infected people from appearing. The division of labor was clear. Lin Yu and the others were in charge of exterminating the rats, while Li Mu was in charge of saving people. Fortunately, no one had died in this village so far. This should be great news. According to Lin Yu, the plague was just a general term for the plague spread by rats. There were more than 10 types of the plague that had been discovered. Each type had a different fatality rate, different harm to the human body, and different medicines were used to treat it. For this type of plague, none of the infected people had died. This meant that its harm was not that great. At least, the patients would not die in a short period of time. This gave them enough time to treat them. Li Mu had just saved 10 people. He had used up some of his mana and had not fully recovered yet. There were more infected people in this village, a total of 26. Li Mu saved another 10 people and felt that his mana was overdrawn. When he stood up, his body swayed and he almost fell. Constable Zhao quickly supported him and said, "You should rest for a while. This time, we are relying on you." Li Mu also wanted to rest. However, from the moment he saved the first person, an endless stream of virtuous thought power gushed out from these patients, from their relatives, and from the people of this village. The mana in Li Mu's body was circulating faster than it had ever been. This was a real and miraculous power that could increase the speed of cultivation. Once he started, he did not want to stop. Li Mu gritted his teeth and said firmly, "Help me up. I can still save." Chapter 155. Li Mu forced himself to save a few more people. Finally, he could not squeeze out a single drop of mana. Constable Zhao helped him sit down and handed him a piece of spiritual jade. The rest of the patients have mild symptoms. Their lives will not be in danger for the time being. You should recover your mana first. It won't be too late to save them later. Li Mu held the spiritual jade in his hand and meditated. At the same time, he was observing the psyche power in his body. This power was not like soul power and charisma, which could be refined directly by him. Instead, it was hidden in his body. After he rested for a while, a group of people walked in from outside the village. The village had been completely sealed off. An old official from the county government stood at the entrance of the village and said sternly, "Halt!" A stout man in official robes looked at him and said, "I am the county magistrate of Yong County. Is Constable Zhao here?" Constable Zhao walked out and saluted the stout man. "Greetings, County Magistrate Chen." County Magistrate Chen smiled and said, "There is no need to trouble Constable Zhao to come here personally for such a small matter." Constable Zhao said coldly, "If I didn't come here personally, County Magistrate Chen would have sealed off all the people in the village, wouldn't he?" County Magistrate Chen shook his head and said, "No one wanted such a thing to happen. Once the plague spreads, it will cause an even greater disaster. As a county magistrate, 100 or so lives are nothing compared to 1,000 or 10,000 lives. I have to look at the big picture. I believe that even the imperial court can understand my actions." Constable Zhao did not say much. Strictly speaking, County Magistrate Chen did not do anything wrong in this matter. However, as long as the local magistrate still had a conscience, he would not treat the lives of 100 or so people under his jurisdiction as a cold number. In his eyes, there was probably only political achievement. Constable Zhao said calmly, "The epidemic in this village has been controlled. There is still a way to save the plague. The county government will deal with the epidemic in Yong County. You don't have to worry about it anymore." County Magistrate Chen smiled and said, "That would be for the best. If Constable Zhao needs any help, just let me know." With that, he left with the group of yamen runners. The villagers knelt on the ground and kowtowed a few times to Li Mu and the others. The village chief breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you for saving our lives. Otherwise, the county magistrate would really let all of us die." Li Mu recovered his magic power and continued to save people. In the process of saving people, he learned that the county magistrate of Yong County did not have a good reputation in the county. The citizens were quite critical of him. Arrestor Zhao sighed and said, "It's really hard for the people of Yong County to have such a parental official." Li Mu had just heard that County Magistrate Chen was inactive and lazy in his administration. He had his ways of exploiting the people and had even disregarded human lives. As he used Buddha's light to save people, he asked, "Isn't County Governor going to do anything about it?" "I can't do anything about it." Arrestor Zhao shook his head and said, "He has people in the Imperial Court. County Governor has also reported this to the Imperial Court several times, but it was suppressed." Li Mu could understand this point. The position of county magistrate was not high, but it was not low either. At the very least, the chief official of a county did not have the power to appoint or dismiss a county magistrate. Only the imperial court had this power. Even if it was just a small county magistrate, as long as he had people in the upper echelons, even the county governor could not easily touch him. After saving the last person, Arrestor Zhao said to Li Mu, "You rest here first. I'll go to the village ahead with them to take a look." Li Mu said, "It's okay, I can still do it." Although he wanted to rest, saving people was more important. The village ahead was the source of the plague. The epidemic was even more serious and patients could die at any time. Compared to human lives, his tiredness was nothing. Arrestor Zhao tried to persuade Li Mu, but seeing that he insisted, he did not try to persuade him anymore. The few of them arranged everything and left the village. As for the situation of the few villages ahead, they had already made some preparations in their hearts. However, when they arrived at the next village a few miles away, the scene in front of them was beyond everyone's expectations. The village did not have the tension and panic of a plague. At the entrance of the village, there was a large pot with black medicinal concoction boiling in it. The villagers of this village were lined up in an orderly manner, and each person scooped a bowl of medicinal concoction from the pot. Arrestor Zhao walked to the side of a villager and asked, "How is the plague in the village?" That person revealed a smile and said, "Originally, more than half of the people were sick and everyone thought that the village was finished. Fortunately, a godly doctor came and said that it was the plague. He gave us a wonderful prescription and we followed the prescription to get the medicine. That's how everyone was cured." Lin Yu thought for a moment and asked curiously, "Can I take a look at this prescription?" The villager looked troubled. He thought for a moment and said, "This I'll have to ask the godly doctor." He strode away and quickly came back. He said embarrassedly, "The godly doctor said that this prescription is only for this type of plague. If there's no cure for the disease, the antidote will become poison." Once it's spread out and used by quacks, it will lead to a disaster. Lin Yu looked apologetic and said, "I'm sorry for being rude." He walked to the large pot at the entrance of the village and looked at it. Then, he lined up and scooped a bowl of soup. After tasting it, he walked to Li Mu and the others and said doubtfully, "That's strange. These are the most basic and common soups for clearing heat and detoxifying. How can they be useful for the plague?" Arrestor Zhao smiled and said, "There are so many prescriptions in the world. How can you know all of them? It doesn't matter if it's common or uncommon. As long as it can cure the plague, it's a good medicine." He leaned against a tree at the entrance of the village and let out a long sigh. He said, "It's good that everything's fine. It's good that everything's fine." Li Mu had already asked around. Because of the godly doctor's appearance, the infected villagers in the previous few villages had all been cured. No one had died. The godly doctor's timely appearance had allowed him to complete his task ahead of time. He might even be able to return to the county capital today. It was a pity that if Li Mu had personally saved the patients in these few villages, the amount of virtuous thought power he could obtain would be incomparably huge. Li Mu leaned against a big tree at the entrance of the village to rest. Suddenly, he felt a familiar energy fluctuation. It was the fluctuation of virtuous thought power. He silently chanted the clear heart mantra and felt this energy from all the villagers. However, this virtuous thought power did not belong to him, so Li Mu could not absorb it. It was produced from the villagers' bodies and surged towards a certain place. Li Mu looked over and saw a middle-aged man in a grey robe walking out of the village, surrounded by a crowd. A few of the villagers asked, "Godly doctor, are you leaving?" The middle-aged man nodded and said, "The plague here has been resolved. It's a matter of life and death. I still have to go to other villages to prevent more people from suffering." The villager walked over and held a cloth bag. He said, "The Zhou family village has no way to repay the godly doctor's kindness for saving our lives. We have gathered some money to express our sincerity. Please accept it." The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. He said, "A doctor has a benevolent heart. I didn't save people for this. You can take this money back." The villager insisted a few times, but he was rejected by the godly doctor. The villager could only give up. He turned around and said to the villagers, "The godly doctor will not accept the money." Everyone kowtowed to the godly doctor to thank him. As soon as he finished speaking, All the villagers at the entrance of the Zhou family village knelt down and kowtowed 3 times respectfully to the godly doctor. Li Mu noticed that even more virtuous thought power floated out from their bodies and surged into the godly doctor's body. He was a little envious of this scene, but not jealous. He saved the dying and healed the injured for free. This godly doctor had a benevolent heart and deserved their kowtow. This godly doctor had a noble character. He gave Li Mu the feeling that he was a cultivator. Li Mu habitually used his heavenly eye to observe for a while, and then couldn't help but be stunned. The godly doctor's body was surrounded by a demonic aura. He was actually a demon. However, the demonic aura on his body was clear and pure without any impurities. He walked the path of righteous cultivation. In the eyes of the people, demons were strange creatures that harmed people. However, many demons were very pure and kind. They worshipped Buddhism and were kinder than humans. Instead, it was the human heart that made people more fearful. This godly doctor's cultivation was clearly much stronger than Li Mu's. He was at least a 4th-level demon cultivator. Li Mu could see his demonic aura, but he couldn't see through his true body. He was curious. He held Bai in his hand and secretly communicated with Madame Chu. She passed a portion of her dermic powers to Li Mu through the scabbard. After a while, Li Mu felt that his body was filled with dermic powers. He used his heavenly eye again and looked at the godly doctor. In front of the Zhou family village's people stood a monster in gray clothes. The demon had the body of a human and the head of a rat. A